Kim Cattrall chose Valentino, an international look, and showing that middle-aged women can look great, too.
Yeah, if that's what middle-age looks like, I think that's okay. Now, Deborah Messing, was this a hit or a miss for you, Tom?
This was a hit because this is a spring 2003 fashion look from Vera Wang. It's chiffon, it's fanciful, it's a little romantic, but it's still novelty and sexy. And it had some wonderful beading at the waistline and the beautiful neckline as well.
Yeah, you can't really tell, but if you see it from the front, cut to, oh my goodness,
yes.
to the Mexican border, you might say. Cut very low. And Deborah Messing, of course, very into fashion and tries to be cutting edge. Talking to some of my girlfriends, some people liked it, some people didn't quite get it, but definitely in keeping with how she does try to be cutting edge.
She continues to deliver and makes a good fashion statement on the red carpet.
What about Renee Zellweger? She likes to go retro, and it seems like she did that yet again last night.
She did. She always selects something very classic but elegant with a twist, and this is a vintage piece from Valentino. And it was the only tea-length gown on, or dress on the stage last night. And as an award winner, she really will go down as a fashion history, thumbs up.
Now, unfortunately for the women who hit it, the ones that we ended up really talking about are the ones that you're like, what were they thinking? And I only wish, Tom, you could have been there on the red carpet when some of these women showed up, because they were definitely jaw-dropping, but not necessarily for the right reasons. Sharon Stone in Versace.
Yeah, you know what, Darren, you're the first one to tell us who that came from, Versace, because there's been a lot of talk. It was very unsuspecting Sharon Stone. She's normally glamorous and sophisticated. She went novelty, gimmicky. It's a little bit of a flapper's look with a dominatrix touch. It had the feather trim, it had a liquid look, and it showed a lot of her body. Now, we respect her for having a wonderful body, but again, you know, she's an actress of wonderful stature, and she almost went into that Cher zone of, you know what were they thinking?
And in terms of what are you thinking, Lara Flynn Boyle, we couldn't even really first tell who it was. To see her from the back, her hair is lighter, she's got the ponytail. Maybe it was like Degas inspired. That was what I was thinking, that she was going for the ballerina look.
Well, you know, Darren, I heard she worked with the Los Angeles designer David Cardona for this look. It is a ballerina takeoff. It is pink, but I really think she did it to have some fun and to put a spin on the red carpet. And she wasn't nominated, and she's a sexy girl, and she just probably wanted to come off as a sexy little ballerina.
So you see, she actually worked on this one. So it wasn't an accident. She worked on it.
That's the reports from the West Coast, and this is what I've been checking all morning, yeah.
Well, she definitely has gotten the publicity from it. I just want to add two women I saw up close that I thought were really lovely and elegant. First of all, Jennifer Garner, who won last year for Alias, in a Ralph Lauren black gown. Just classic. She's a pretty girl, and really hit it. I don't know if her hair transfers on camera, but in person it was up. That necklace was really pretty, all these different size pearls. And we're not really getting a good look at the dress, but just really classic and sexy, and I think she's a really pretty girl.
You know what? She and her husband seem to represent the new Hollywood couple. Sophisticated, glamorous, not too overdone, but very stylish. And she won an award last year, and she was up again, and I think she delivered fashion for an American designer, Ralph Lauren, rather well.
And real quickly, a woman who's showing it, you can have it going on, Kathy Bates, who... She did a nude scene in the movie About Schmidt with Jack Nicholson. I thought she looked lovely last night. Her hair was done, and she had a nice suit on, and, you know, it's a different look, of course. Opposite end of the spectrum, but I thought she looked lovely.
And I think there were a lot of women middle-aged who came to the awards looking fantastic and very fashionable, and Kathy represented that age group very well.
Absolutely. And she told me on the red carpet that she's been getting a lot of positive feedback on that nude scene that she did with Jack Nicholson. So I'd say you go, girl, on the red carpet and in the hot tub with Jack Nicholson. Hey, Tom, thanks a lot for joining us.
Good to see you, Darren.
I appreciate your feedback. Thanks so much, and thanks for the thumbs up. You know, it's always a little kind of nerve-wracking when you head out there on the red carpet yourself. We're going to take a break. Carol and Leon will be back with more after this.
About financial relationships. You have to reach out to make them work. They're most valuable when faced with the unexpected. Wisdom is everywhere. Uncommon wisdom is knowing how to apply it. Wachovia Securities. Talk to us.
On CNN tonight.
A shocking crime. A woman charged with running her husband down. The trial of Clara Harris.
CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
Something cool is on In Demand. Get ready to chill with Ray Romano.
You're an embarrassment to nature. Do you know that?
John Leguizamo.
Captain Iceberg ahead!
Dennis Leary.
There's the baby. There he is.
And Scrap.
Oh, that's perfect.
We are the weirdest shirt I've ever seen.
Order Ice Age on In Demand pay-per-view. Watch these Sub-Zero heroes at home on Cox Cable.
Ya está aquí Canal Sur, con los noticieros, informativos deportivos, entrevistas, programas de entretenimiento y mucho más. Todos de diversos puntos de Latinoamérica, tal y cual como se transmiten en sus países de origen. Canal Sur, hecho en Latinoamérica para los latinoamericanos, porque en Sur somos Latinoamérica.
The promotion, a new title, a bigger paycheck, better days ahead. Your hard work paid off, and so did that extra confidence from getting rid of your gray hair with Just for Men hair color. Its vitamin formula rejuvenates your hair and energizes you with a natural look in 5 easy minutes. When you feel confident, it shows. Just for Men, the Rejuvenator.
Learning, working to improve your community, developing new skills, and a strong character. It's all easier when it's based on fun. 4-H is fun. Just ask the kids.
It's very fun because it's diverse and I get to meet a lot of people.
Aside from the friendships, it's just a lot of fun. There's activities from the fairs to camps to day camps, all those types of things.
4-H. Have fun while learning. Contact your local Virginia Cooperative Extension Office today.
This is CNN.
Okay. All right, Super Bowl 37. How many X's and I's is that? Okay, XXXVII.
3 of them. 2 I's.
There you go, XXXVII. Now set for San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium Sunday, and it's going to be a battle of the Pirates. The Bucs and the Raiders are going to meet in what looks like a classic game of the best offense against the best defense. It's Tampa Bay's first trip ever to the big game. Now, Oakland's been there before, but they haven't played in the Super Bowl since back in the 70s, in the heyday of the Raiders. 70s and the early 80s, we should say. All right, now the matchup also is going to pit Tampa Bay's head coach against his old team. CNN sports correspondent Matt Morrison's here with that. Great story there.
Oh, a lot of great storylines in this Super Bowl, and you have to look forward to this all-pirate thing, the Gruden versus Al Davis. The situation is going to be a lot of fun to look forward to. Only got a week this.
Were arrested, but no poisons were found. Not arrested was the mosque's radical leader, whom authorities suspect has ties to Al-Qaeda. A London-based Arab newspaper says it's obtained a 26-page letter supposedly written in the past few weeks by Osama bin Laden. The letter reportedly urges Muslims to stop fighting one another and to, quote, direct their arrows to what the writer calls the external enemy. And a top Russian envoy has hand-delivered Moscow's proposal for ending the war of nerves with North Korea. The plan would reinstate the 1994 framework for keeping North Korea nuclear-free, as well as Pyongyang's participation in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Pyongyang is demanding a non-aggression treaty with Washington. More on that later on. But that is the news alert. Now to Wolf Blitzer in Washington and Showdown, Iraq.
The United Nations resolution did not put the burden of proof on the United States or the United Nations to prove that Iraq has these weapons. The UN resolution put the burden directly on Iraq to prove that it is disarming and that it does not have these weapons, or if it does, it is willing to give them up.
The Defense Secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, declares Iraq guilty until proven innocent. Iraq insists the proof is out there and it will help inspectors find it. Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Welcome to Showdown Iraq. Joining me this hour with all the late-breaking developments are CNN's Nick Robertson in Baghdad, Jane Araf in Ankara, Turkey, and our Barbara Starr, she's over at the Pentagon. The talk of war, it seems to permeate almost every gathering here in Washington these days. During the past hour, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld told a group of military reservists a decision will not take months to make. For more, let's bring in our Pentagon correspondent, Barbara Starr. Barbara, yesterday when I interviewed the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, he refused to say how much of a time frame is out there, weeks, months, or whatever. Today we heard the Defense Secretary say it won't take months to find out if the Iraqis are guilty or innocent. More hardline talk from him.
Indeed, Wolf. The Defense Secretary and the President have expressed a lot of impatience over recent weeks with Iraq, saying that they want to get a decision on this, saying that they can't wait forever. At this speech earlier this morning here in Washington, Secretary Rumsfeld took a very tough stand on both Iraq and North Korea. He repeated what he has said here in the Pentagon many times, however, that both countries are different. A lot of questions, of course, about why diplomacy with North Korea and talk of war against Iraq. He made the case that both of them are very different. Diplomacy, he said, works in the case of North Korea because the North Koreans, it was his view, are essentially blackmailing the U.S. and their allies for economic aid, using their weapons program as a tool of blackmail. But he drew a very sharp contrast indeed with Iraq.
Now, in the case of Iraq, we're nearing the end of the long road, and with every other option exhausted. With North Korea, by contrast, that is not yet the case.
And as you mentioned, Wolf, the Secretary made the point that so many other administration officials made on the weekend talk shows.
No one wants war. But as the President has said, Iraq will be disarmed, and the decision between war and peace will be made not in Washington, D.C., and not in the United Nations in New York, but rather in Baghdad. It is their decision. Either they will cooperate or they won't. And it will not take months to determine whether or not they are cooperating.
So, Wolf, the rhetoric, the tough talk, all of that continues this week here in Washington, but it's still a little unclear whether all of the allies back the Bush administration's position at this point. Wolf?
It's interesting when he adds the phrase, it won't take months. This, of course, comes on the heels of several of those top inspectors, those weapons inspectors, as well as other allies saying it might take months. It might take more than 6 months. It might even take a year to complete the job. We heard that from Mohammed El-Baradei, the nuclear inspector. We've heard that from Hans Blix, from Jacques Chirac. The fact that he's saying now it won't take months to determine if the Iraqis are guilty or innocent, if you will, that suggests it will only take a few weeks, or at least take weeks, they're talking about, rather than months. The Defense Secretary was also asked a question, and I don't know if you heard this, Barbara, about the meetings that have been going on for a post-Saddam regime, the possibility of what the U.S. might do. You want to lay out that strategy, what he has in mind?
Well, the Pentagon position on all of that has been, if Saddam leaves one way or the other, diplomacy or war, and there is a new regime in Iraq, that the United States military, for some period of time, perhaps indeed months, would take on a stabilization and security role in Iraq. They are very strongly resisting the notion here that there would be any kind of military occupation force. They don't want to draw any analogy to what occurred in Japan, of course, after World War II. They want to draw the distinction that the U.S. military would only be in Iraq to provide security and stabilization as a new government, a new regime could get in place. But I have to tell you, Wolf, that the big unanswered question that we hear so much around here is what new regime? We've spoken to many senior military officials that say that it is just a vast black hole. No one is very clear who would step in, what kind of power structure could be put in place in Iraq with Iraqi officials. What regime could be put in place? There does not appear to be anyone waiting in the wings to take over, as Hamid Karzai was in Afghanistan. So all of this, appears to be a very unsettled question.
All right, Barbara Starr at the Pentagon, thanks very much, Barbara, for that report. We're also standing by for remarks from the Secretary of State, Colin Powell. He's at the United Nations, meeting with delegates from the UN Security Council, setting the stage for next week's meeting. Next week's report, 1 week from today, from the UN inspectors, an update on the Iraqi weapons of mass destruction. Once the Secretary of State speaks, we'll go there live to New York. But let's go to Baghdad right now, where government officials and the chief UN weapons inspectors are wrapping up 2 days of talks with 10 points of agreement. Iraq is promising more and better access, cooperation, and information as it tries to hold off further UN action at the end of this month. Let's get the latest from our senior international correspondent, Nick Robertson. He's standing by in Baghdad. Nick?
Wolf Hans Blix, the chief UN weapons inspector, along with Mohammed al-Baradei, the director general of the International Atomic Energy Agency, appear to have got some progress from their meetings here. 10 points of agreement with Iraqi officials. One of the key questions they'd come here with for the Iraqi government was they wanted to be able to interview in private Iraqi scientists. Now, they appear to have agreement on that. Iraqi government saying that they will encourage scientists to meet privately with the UN inspectors. Iraqi officials also saying that they will encourage private citizens to open their houses to UN inspectors if that's needed. The Iraqi authorities also saying that following the discovery last week of a dozen empty chemical warheads, that they will now form their own inspection team and scour the countryside, scour the depots to see if there are any other such munitions lying around. They have also said again...
Nick, let me interrupt you for a moment, Nick, because the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, is speaking in New York.
With Resolution 1441, I'm pleased that it was President Bush who brought this situation to the attention of the Council in the most forceful way last September to give them this one last chance. And we must not shrink from our duties and our responsibilities when the material comes before us next week and as we consider Iraq's response to 1441. And we cannot fail to take the action that may be necessary because we are afraid of what others might do. We cannot be shocked into impotence because we're afraid of the difficult choices that are ahead of us. And so we'll have much work to do, difficult work, in the days ahead. But we cannot shrink from the responsibilities of dealing with a regime that has gone about the development, acquiring, stocking of weapons of mass destruction, that has committed terrorist acts against its neighbors and against its own people, trampled human rights of its own people and its neighbors. And so however difficult the road ahead may be with respect to Iraq, we must not shrink from the need to travel down that road. Hopefully, there will be a peaceful solution. But if Iraq does not come into full compliance, we must not shrink from the responsibilities that we set before ourselves when we adopted 1441 on a unanimous basis, and so many other nations expressed their support for 1441. Weapons of mass destruction in the hands of terrorists or states that support terrorists would represent a mortal danger to us all. So we must make the United Nations even more effective, and we must build even closer international cooperation to keep these weapons out of the hands of terrorists. The United Nations has long worked to marshal the international community against terrorism. For example, as we have noted here this morning, there are 12 counterterrorism conventions and protocols negotiated under the auspices of the United Nations and its affiliated agencies. It is vital that all states become parties to all of these conventions and protocols and fully implement them as soon as possible. With the passage of Security Council Resolution 1373 in September 2001, the United Nations fundamentally changed the way the international community responds to terrorism. Resolution 1373 created an obligation for all member states to work together to deny terrorists the ability to solicit and move funds, to find safe haven, acquire weapons, or cross international borders. Resolution 1373 said that if you are a member of the community of civilized nations, you must do your part to eliminate terrorist networks and terrorist activities. And as we have seen and as we have discussed here today, Resolution 1373 is starting to have an impact. Most member states have submitted reports to the CTC describing the measures they have taken to implement Resolution 1373 and identifying what more needs to be done. This is a very important step, and as Ambassador Greenstock noted earlier, countries that have not taken this step should comply as quickly as possible. Those that have should continue to be responsive to requests from the Counterterrorism Committee. Some countries are eager to implement Resolution 1373 and to take other measures against terrorists, but they lack the necessary skills and resources to do so effectively. We must help them build up their capabilities. I challenge all nations with counterterrorism expertise to help our willing partners. Many countries have already stepped up to the challenge. For example, the Commonwealth Secretariat, France, Australia, Germany, New Zealand, and Norway are all providing assistance in areas such as drafting anti-terrorist legislation. For our part, we have more than tripled our capacity-building assistance. Last year alone, our anti-terrorism assistance program trained nearly 4,800 security personnel from 60 countries in everything from bomb detection to hostage negotiations, crime scene investigations, and the protection of dignitaries. We are also devoting $10 million in the coming year to help strengthen the ability of 18 countries to deny terrorists the funds they need to kill innocent people. Indeed, the international community has already made impressive progress in freeing terrorist assets, and the United Nations has played the leading role in this unprecedented effort. For example, the United Nations has designated 324 names for asset freezing. In addition, Security Council Resolutions 1267 and 1390 laid a strong foundation for halting the flow of money to terrorists associated with the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and Osama bin Laden. We are particularly pleased that just last Friday, the Security Council unanimously adopted Resolution 1455. This important new resolution is aimed at improving member state implementation of these sanctions that are targeted at terrorists and without time limits. The international community could not have sent a stronger message of its determination to stamp out terrorism. We look forward to working with Ambassador Valdez of Chile as he assumes the chairmanship of the committee established pursuant to Security Council Resolution 1267 to implement the Al-Qaeda sanctions regime. This committee has become even more important with the unanimous passage of Resolution 1455. But we all need to do more, and we need to coordinate our efforts better. Many international organizations at regional and sub-regional level are already working to counter the terrorist threat. These organizations have an important role to play in helping their member states fulfill their counterterrorism obligations. Now is the time for these groups to talk to each other, to exchange information, and coordinate their activities for maximum effect. The Counterterrorism Committee is taking a good first step by convening a meeting this March to bring many of these organizations together. Colleagues, friends, the challenge before us is to weave counterterrorism into the very fabric of our national institutions and our international institutions. We must rise to the challenge. We must rise to the challenge with actions that will rid the globe of terrorism and create a world in which all God's children can live without fear. Thank you.
Je remercie le secrétaire d'État des États-Unis d'Amérique de cette déclaration. Je donne maintenant la parole au ministre.
State Colin Powell addressing the United Nations Security Council, speaking on the issue of terrorism, but also speaking out forcefully on the situation involving Iraq, saying hopefully a war can be avoided, but also going on to say pointedly that that the United Nations cannot shirk from its responsibility, in his words, if the Iraqis do not fully comply. Also saying the U.S. cannot be shown to be impotent if the Iraqis do not fully comply with Security Council Resolution 1441 that was passed in November. CNN's Michael Oku, who is over at the United Nations following the activities of the Secretary of State. Is he generating much support so far, at least visibly, for the hardline U.S. stance, Michael?
Wolf, it certainly appears to be that way. A U.S. official and other Western diplomats we have spoken to today say that Secretary Powell has been pushing the administration line throughout the course of the day today, saying quite emphatically to some of those foreign ministers that time is running out for Saddam Hussein, and in fact repeating the fact that what the administration has been saying for quite some time now, that January 27th report by Hans Blix may be viewed by the administration as the beginning of the final stage of dealing with Saddam Hussein and Iraq diplomatically. We also understand from some of these sources that the foreign ministers that Powell spoke to are in widespread agreement that Iraq is not doing as much as it could do, despite some of the agreements coming out of Baghdad today, saying quite forcefully that this is something that the Iraqis should have been doing when this resolution was adopted. To wait now, weeks after inspectors have been there, might not just be enough. But you heard Powell speaking. He was here initially, ostensibly, to talk about a resolution on international terrorism, a resolution that is essentially, Wolf, a fine-tuning of a resolution that was passed back in November 2001 in the wake of 9/11. But clearly, Powell using this as an opportunity, Wolf, to talk about what the unofficial focus is here at the United Nations, and that, again, is Iraq. Wolf?
And 1 week from today, as you point out, Michael, the chief inspectors will be making their report, their updated report. They're insisting this is not a deadline. It's merely a status report. You heard the Defense Secretary of the United States, Donald Rumsfeld, earlier saying it shouldn't take months to find out whether the Iraqis are cooperating, but the inspectors have said it could take months. There seems to be a little bit of daylight between what we're hearing from the inspectors, Blix and Al-Baradei on the one hand, and the Bush administration on the other.
Well, this has been the tension, if you will, that's been in existence now for some weeks. The United States does not want to sit around for a long time to get a resolution on this, but other members of the Security Council have been saying, sometimes directly and indirectly, that they want to give the inspectors a chance, that these inspection regimes take time to actually work through their process and then to eventually develop relationships with government officials in Baghdad and then eventually to find things. There's also a feeling, a sense here, Wolf, that you should not do anything before the 27th, that now that the Iraqis seem to be complying a little bit and the inspectors are getting a lot more tough, that this regime is getting much more difficult for the officials in Baghdad, that it could just be a matter of time, that things could change very easily within 7 days, and that is that the Iraqis could very well slip up or the inspectors might find something. Wolf?
Michael Oku at the United Nations covering all this for us. Thanks, Michael, very much. U.S. forces and others are now in countries all around Iraq. That includes, of course, Turkey, the only Muslim NATO nation, and one that's not exactly enthusiastic about America's plan to use its territory as a possible staging area, at least based on popular public opinion polls in Turkey taken in recent days. After a weekend, though, of talks there, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff says Turkey remains, quote, a very important strategic partner, adding, nobody wants conflict.
We're not talking about an attack on Iraq. What we're talking about and what we've said over time is that the U.S. has been deploying forces to the region to to help reinforce the diplomatic efforts that are working through the United Nations and other means to convince the Iraqi regime of our resolve that they must do what they're called upon to do under the UN Security Council resolution.
And we're getting this just in from London, the British Defense Secretary Geoffrey Hoon telling the House of Commons that a land force of 26,000 British troops will be heading to the region in the not-too-distant future. He says this is no ordinary measure. It underscores the need to potentially take action if the Iraqis do not comply. None of the steps we are taking represents a commitment of British forces to military action. He goes on to say a decision to employ force has not been taken, nor is such a decision imminent or inevitable. Still, the British preparing for that contingency. Just ahead, our sound-off debate of the day, plus protesters out in full force around the globe. And an update on how reservist Scott Howell, how's he doing as he gets ready for active duty? We've been following him and his family over the past several days. We'll be following him over the next several months to see conflict through their eyes. Stay with us.
You're watching Showdown Iraq with Wolf Blitzer on CNN.
We're back in a moment.
What can handlebars teach us about financial relationships? You have to reach out to make them work. They're most valuable when faced with the unexpected. Wisdom is everywhere. Uncommon wisdom is knowing how to apply it. Wachovia Securities. Talk to us.
In movies, music, and even sports, why have profanity and violence stolen the spotlight? Don't miss our special report on Lou Dobbs' Moneyline. CNN Tonight, 6 Eastern.
Rock stars are famous for redecorating hotel rooms. Yes. And now we're letting them loose on your place. But hey, you asked for it.
Have them come decorate my house.
Rock the House, a brand new show where your favorite artists attempt to beautify your abode when you're not looking.
Your landlord will never know.
Mondays at 10/9 Central on VH1.
Rock the house. Come on. Pow.
Download design tips by Sammy Hagar, Usher, Snoop Dogg, and more in seconds. Order Cox high-speed internet.
Geico's always been about savings, but he really brought customer service to a whole new level.
We settle a ton of claims in under 48 hours.
Guaranteed claim repairs? That was his idea.
Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high.
You know what he represents? A commitment to excellence.
And he deserves this award.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is CNN.
Iraq's Oil for Food program was meant to help average Iraqis, but it was also meant as a temporary fix. 12 years later, is it really working? Dennis Halliday is the former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and the former UN coordinator to oversee Iraq's Oil for Food program. He just recently returned from Iraq, where he was an observer for the Institute for Public Accuracy. Mr. Halliday, thanks very much for joining us. Well, what's your assessment right now? Is the situation as gloomy as it would appear to be on the surface?
I believe so. I think the resilience of the Iraqis is much depleted since 1991. The government, however, has distributed 3 months and hope to distribute 2 more months of food supplies. I visited a number of families. They indeed have 3 months in stock at home already. But the people there are extremely concerned. They believe Mr. Bush wants war. They don't understand how it can be stopped. They don't understand why they are being punished by the United States. I think the officials I met believe that public opinion in this country is what counts most. And I think I agree with that. This is an issue for Americans to persuade Mr. Bush there's another way of resolving this issue of weapons or oil and need of oil for this economy. War is the last possible resort.
Well, we're looking at some pictures of people apparently stockpiling rations, getting ready for the war, if in fact it comes down to that. How are they doing that? How are they distributing food and other essential needs for average Iraqis? You used to be in charge of that program.
That's right. The program is run by the government. They employ about 50,000 agents throughout the country. These agents have been instructed by the Ministry of Trade to give out 3 months' supply. That's wheat flour, that's rice, that's tea, sugar, all the basics, cooking oils that every family requires. And that's been done, and more is to come. The government, I think, wants to empty its warehouses for fear they will be bombed, but also to give the people the wherewithal to hunker down and survive, hopefully, a military or Air Force attack. The big concern remaining is water, and good water supplies are essential, obviously, for the lives of young children and adults in addition, and that remains a concern in the towns and cities of Iraq.
Is it a widely held assumption among rank-and-file average people, you were there, what, for almost a week, that there will, in fact, be a war?
I fear so. The Iraqi people seem convinced that Mr. Bush is determined to go to war against Iraq. There's nothing they can do to stop it, it seems, and they're waiting for the inevitable. They're sort of fatalistic. They've seen it before. They fear it again. They worry about their children and the lives of their families, but they find no hope in this opportunity here to stop this aggression.
As I'm sure you realize, many Bush administration officials hope this enormous armada that's being created, the show of firepower, will convince some Iraqi generals, perhaps, to overthrow Saddam Hussein, or convince Saddam Hussein himself to seek exile and get amnesty someplace else. Right. Are either of those scenarios that would avert a war, are either of those scenarios realistic based on your long-time assessment of the situation in Iraq?
I don't believe so. This is a country where pride and sovereignty and honor is very important. I don't think average Iraqis are going to want to be seen to give up on their country, to walk away from that responsibility. I think the head of state is most unlikely to step down. I can't visualize that happening. And it would mean, of course, for Iraq and the Iraqi government that they're yielding to pressure, to military pressure, to the concept that might is right, which it certainly is not. And the military build-up, clearly designed to frighten Iraqis and try to overthrow the government, has not worked. And as we've seen in the past, we have strengthened, we the United Nations, United States, have strengthened the government in Baghdad by aggressively attacking the leadership. It's very much the way Mr. Bush had success after 9/11, when people naturally rallied around him, and that's what we've done in the case of Iraq similarly.
Dennis Halliday joining us today from New York. Thanks very much. From New York, right?
That's right.
Thanks, Dennis, very much for joining us, the former Assistant UN Secretary General. Appreciate it very much. Let's go to Baghdad now. There's a news conference that's just beginning. We see the chief Iraqi representative to the international inspectors being hooked up to a microphone. He's about to make an opening statement and then make comments to reporters. As he does, we'll get his assessment of the current situation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we have today come to an agreed statement with Dr. Hans Blix and Dr. Mohammed al-Baradi, and you have been familiarized with this document of 10 points, and without further ado, I'll be happy to answer any questions, because the document is self-explanatory and I have no opening statement to make.
One of the issues that Mr. Blix said was still outstanding despite the 10 points of agreement was the issue of U-2 surveillance aircraft. Why have you not been able to reach agreement on that issue?
Well, that's one of the sticky points. It still is. We have reservations about allowing a spy plane to enter, although we are assured that it is painted with UN colors, and the pilot and ground crew are all U.S. personnel, but working under UN mandate. It's still a spy plane. And to enter Iraq and be free to move around all over the country and loiter for hours, up to 6 hours, over Iraq, presents us with difficulties regarding our air defense capabilities. It will present us with a real problem. And we had some suggestions as to what could be acceptable for us. And it seems that the IAEA and the UNMOVIC, although they are organs of the United Nations or the Security Council itself, they are not able to prevail on persuading the American and the British to alter this daily intrusion into Iraqi airspace and the armed conflicts that take place on a daily basis. It's even more often than reported in the news media. Therefore, we had some suggestions that these flights should be they're illegal. Everybody knows that. They have no mandate to do that. And we suggested that they should be halted for the duration of the entry of this plane, the UN plane. They couldn't even offer that. Therefore, we cannot be responsible for the safety of the UN plane and the crew. It's one pilot actually, that's not a crew.
جزيرة. سيد الفريق سؤالي حول البند المتعلق باستجواب العلماء العراقيين. هل يعني النص الوارد في هذا البند أن المفتشين سيتمكنون اعتبارا من اليوم من استجواب العلماء العراقيين بعيدا عن الرقابة؟ أم أن الأمر ما زال خاضعا لموافقتهم شخصيا؟ وماذا بشأن الاستجواب في الخارج؟ قبرص اليوم أعلنت أنها قد توافق على استقبال العلماء العراقيين. هل هناك إجراءات في هذا الشأن؟
موضوع المقابلات هو منصوص عليه هنا في هذا البند ولا أكثر من ذلك. هو أن العراق يشجع العلماء بأن يذهبوا
encourages the scientists to attend the interviews,
يضمنوا حقوقهم
and they have the right to safeguard their rights under the law, and we have always encouraged this arrangement, but the scientists themselves insist on some safeguards to protect themselves and safeguard the information that they give so it doesn't get distorted or misunderstood by any other party. Therefore, this issue still remains the prerogative of the person himself, and we don't interfere. And we are committed to the resolution, and there is no way back. The target should always be that Iraq is free of weapons of mass destruction. What about Cyprus? We haven't discussed the traveling arrangement for anyone outside Iraq.
Encourage Iraqi scientists to participate in private interviews. Will you compel them at all to participate in the interviews, and will you allow the interviews outside of the country?
We will never compel them, but we will encourage them, as have happened on several occasions. It is in our interest to answer questions relevant to Iraq's programs, past programs, and that Iraq is, as we say, is clean. Anything else, any other questions, tendentious questions, of course, it's up to them whether to respond to them or not. They will see that themselves. They are educated people and they are aware of everything. As far as outside the country, we haven't touched upon this because our attitude towards that is also known, that it is entirely up to the scientist himself if he is willing to leave his country and do an interview outside.
مونte كارلو. عفوا سيادة الفريق، هل تتوقعون أن ينعكس إيجابيا اتفاقكم مع بليكس على تقريره الذي سيقدمه إلى مجلس الأمن، أم أن القضايا العالقة ستبقى سيفا مسلطا
positively on the report that Blix is going to deliver to the Security Council? The outstanding issues are, in fact, less than those that have been agreed. Mr. Blix is a professional and he serves the Security Council as a whole. He does not work for a specific body. We expect him to be professional and honest, and we expect him to tell the truth.
Line of the statement or joint statement, whatever it is, speaks about legislation on this on prohibited weapons. What does that mean?
This actually is a requirement foreseen in the resolution, the Security Council resolution 715, which actually relates to the ongoing monitoring phase. But in anticipation that the disarmament phase will take only a relatively short time, and the ongoing monitoring phase will be then applicable and requires such legislation. And the first party to ask for legislation was the IAEA, because effectively from early on in 1992 they finished all disarmament questions, and they were ready for an ongoing monitoring phase. That's why they felt necessary that we should enact the legislation in accordance with the Security Council Resolution 715. And the ONSCOM at the time never raised this question because they haven't finished disarmament. And we gave a draft as early as 1995 for comments and consideration by the UN agencies, and we never received an answer for a long time. And the matter has been raised again and has become a persistent request or demand that this legislation should be enacted, although we haven't finished. Even according to the Security Council resolution, we haven't finished the disarmament phase. But the ongoing monitoring phase has been established since 1994 and was up and running up to 1998, when it was destroyed by the UN-UK aggression. And we have come back to this question again. Everybody knows that legislation takes, it's a due process. It's a long procedure. Everybody in the country, from Ministry of Justice to the Council, the State Council for Law, the highest authority, should have an input, and finally the National Congress also has to consider this, and all these take time. And this matter has been started since some time ago, not long ago. In fact, when we resumed dialogue with the United Nations and UNMOBIC, it has been raised up again. And we have been looking at what other countries has done in similar cases, and we are working on it. That's what it means here, to enact this legislation that nobody on the territory of Iraq would be engaged in any proscribed activity. That's all it means.
That London. No.
جميع النقاط العشر لاحظتها صراحة واضحة كأنما لصالح الطرف الآخر كليا. ليست هناك جزء من نقطة تشير إلى أن هناك، أعذرني عن التعبير الخشن، تقدير للموقف العراقي، يعني تقييم للموقف العراقي. تعليقكم رجاء.
للأسف يعني ملاحظتك صحيحة، ولكن
unfortunately your remarks is correct, but as I said, we are serious about dealing with Resolution 1441. Iraq is always meets its obligations, but once this is established, people tend to forget that Iraq has fulfilled its obligation. Now there are things that are required. Most of it is foregone conclusion, such as Iraq encourages the private sector and ordinary citizens to cooperate with the inspectors. Iraq has always maintained that. There have been many visits to private sector sites, and it's always been encouraged by the Iraqi government, because we see that in our own interest. Iraq has nothing to hide. Today we received a request to inspect a farm, a private farm, for someone. Also we received a request to give access to a building that has some tools. It's for poultry place. This place has been closed down because of the blockade, and in order to protect these expensive machinery is being locked away.
Amr al-Sadi, the chief Iraqi scientist, offering his assessment on the 2 days of talks the chief UN inspectors had, Hans Blix, Mohammed al-Baradei, saying the Iraqis right now are encouraging but not compelling their scientists to cooperate, to meet privately without Iraqi officials present and answer questions from the inspectors, also saying they're not encouraging anyone. They're not talking even about the possibility of these Iraqi scientists leaving the country to a third country like Cyprus, perhaps to be interviewed. Says the Iraqis cannot force them to do so, also insisting that issue has not even been discussed. We'll continue to monitor the news conference in Baghdad, hear what else he's saying, of course, bring that to you live. I also want to update our viewers around the United States on a story that broke this weekend that we've been following here at CNN. And on Mount St. Helens, family of 4 had been missing. This just in, we're happy to report that the family has been found. They're in good condition. The family of Billy Buzzini, his wife Sarah, their 2 daughters, 4-year-old Sarah and 1-year-old Madison. Their car was found earlier. They are now in a hospital. Apparently the car drove off, was found stuck in the snow. The police looked at some footprints. They followed along a river, eventually finding this family. So good news on that front. The family has been found. They're reported to be in good condition. We'll update our viewers on that more as we get some more information. But let's get back now to the showdown with Iraq. Across the country, indeed the world, the cry grows louder for a non-military solution to Iraq. Is it possible? Sounding off today from New York, Amy Goodman, she's host of Democracy Now! On Pacifica Radio, and Max Boot with the Council on Foreign Relations. He's author of the book, The Savage Wars of Peace. Thanks to both of you for joining us. Max, is it possible to avoid a war with Iraq?
Wolf, it's possible, but very unlikely in my opinion. To avoid a war with Iraq, we would have to have voluntary disarmament by the Saddam Hussein regime. And everything that we know about Saddam, one of the most brutal and ruthless dictators in the world over the past 20 years, is that he will never give up his weapons of mass destruction, no matter what the UN says. Therefore, I think it's extremely unlikely that he will go quietly. And it's
Amy,
also...
let Amy weigh in on that as well. Go ahead, Amy.
Sure, it's possible. I mean, if Donald Rumsfeld was willing to shake Saddam's hand in 1983 and 1984 when he knew he was using chemical weapons, surely he can negotiate diplomatically with him now when he knows he's not.
Well, you're referring to a mission that he undertook during the Reagan administration to Baghdad at a time when U.S.-Iraqi relations were clearly much better than they are now in the face of that Iraqi war with Iran. But go ahead, Max. Why don't you respond to Amy?
I think the operative point there, though, is that the U.S. at that time knew well that Saddam Hussein was using chemical weapons, and yet Donald Rumsfeld did not raise this issue in Baghdad. Instead, he shook Saddam Hussein's hand and helped to normalize relations with Iraq. Certainly,
well, let's flesh that out for one. Hold on one second. Let's let Max weigh in. My understanding was the Iraqis used chemical weapons, gas, against the Kurds in northern Iraq later in the 80s. 88, I believe, not in 84.
No,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's correct, Wolf. They used it. Can I get on a word in edgewise, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Max.
That is correct, Wolf. Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons in a hideous campaign in 1987, 1988, especially around the area of Halabja, which is one of the Kurdish villages in northern Iraq. But I am puzzled. I am truly puzzled by the way the left harps on this time and again, as if we were somehow the reason why Saddam Hussein was in power in the 1980s, which is not at all the case. But even if we were to some extent supporting Saddam, which we were during his war with Iran, which was an even worse enemy in the 1980s, Doesn't that create even more of a burden upon us today to make up for those policies of the past by removing this evil cancer upon the Middle East, whom we once supported? I would think it is incumbent upon us to liberate the people of Iraq and to get rid of this evil dictator, and I believe that is ultimately what we're going to have to do, Wolf.
All right, Amy, go ahead.
Well, right now, first of all, I would say back in '83 and '84, we're talking about Saddam Hussein, who is gassing the Iranians and the war there, and the UN, the State Department of the United States knew it well. But right now, what is the answer? If we're talking about our concern for Iraqi civilians, certainly the answer is not to bomb them, as the U.S. has continued to do on a regular basis, along with Britain, the two countries that have the most powerful oil companies who want to get into Iraq. That's what this is about.
That is
we should
ridiculous.
have no illusion about it being about anything else.
That is an absurd charge. The oil companies have no interest in overthrowing Saddam Hussein, the Saudi royal family, or any other dictators in the Middle East. They are perfectly happy to cut deals with dictators. The oil companies would like to have sanctions lifted. They don't want to have the Saddam Hussein regime overthrown. And that is also a specious charge that we are, quote-unquote, bombing civilians. What U.S. warplanes are doing in enforcing the northern and southern no-fly zones is responding when Iraqi air defenses are illegally firing upon them, and they are targeting Iraqi radars. They are not targeting civilians. It is Saddam Hussein who kills civilians deliberately. It is not the United States military.
I just spoke with 4 women who returned from Iraq who lost loved ones at the World Trade Center. They're with the group Peaceful Tomorrows. They went to Iraq to build bridges with ordinary Iraqis. They went to the home of a family whose husband and father had died just a few weeks ago as a result of another U.S. bombing in the so-called no-fly zone that's not authorized by the United Nations but imposed by the United States and Britain.
Did these so-called peace activists of yours happen to visit with any Iraqis who had lost family members who had been raped, tortured, or killed by Saddam Hussein's regime, of whom there are hundreds of thousands, perhaps?
I want to make it very clear. There is no question that Saddam Hussein is brutal and that he's a dictator. There is also no question that Kim Jong-il in North Korea is a dictator. But the U.S. has decided to deal diplomatically with him. I think that they can come up with a way to deal diplomatically with Iraq. The difference is the U.S. wants to control the oil fields of Iraq.
That is an absurd charge, and the reason why we are dealing diplomatically with Kim Jong-il is because he already has nuclear weapons, and I would hope that we would act in the case of Iraq before Saddam Hussein acquires nuclear weapons. And I wish you would stop repeating the specious charge that this is a war about acquiring oil fields, when the fact of the matter is that any government of liberated post-war Iraq will control its own oil fields, just as the government of liberated post-war Kuwait controls its own oil fields, and we have not gotten any kind of advantage in the oil fields from liberating Kuwait from Iraqi aggression.
All right, we have to wrap it up. Hold on one second. We have to wrap it up. I'm going to give both of you one last chance to wrap up your final thought. Amy, you first, very briefly, and then Max.
I encourage you to read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, where they lay out the blueprint of a post-Saddam Iraq. It is very clear the U.S. will control Iraq for at least 18 months, and the first thing they will do is quickly take control of the oil fields. This is about oil.
If you will
Max, go ahead.
If you will finish reading those stories which you cite, you will see that Secretary of State Powell and other senior U.S. government officials have pledged that all oil revenues of Iraq will be used to rebuild liberated Iraq. It will not be going for the benefit of the United States. In fact, this war is going to wind up costing us an awful lot of money, $50 to $60 billion at a lower estimate. So we're not going to make a profit on this war if that's what you're implying. That's an absurd charge to make.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it, Amy, we have to leave it right there because we are all out of time. I know both of you were very patient and waiting with us during all the news conferences that we covered this hour. I want to thank both of you and invite you back on another occasion. We'll continue this discussion. Amy Goodman and Max Boot, thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thank you, Will.
We're going to take a look at the latest public opinion numbers. Frank Newport from the Gallup poll will be joining us. Some very important numbers coming out. How much support is there for a possible showdown with Iraq? We'll let you know.
While other mortgage companies are still filling out the paperwork, Digest.com is busy processing your loan. Apply now for a low fixed-rate mortgage or cash out some of your equity. It's a whole new way to get a mortgage. Just log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED. Ditech.com, your mortgage solution delivered.
On CNN tonight.
A shocking crime. A woman charged with running her husband down. The trial of Clara Harris.
CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
Want some good economic news? 10 million Americans and growing are saving millions of dollars every month because Congress gave them the freedom to choose their local phone company. Even SBC has lowered their prices to compete. But SBC continues to pressure the government to end competition. If they get away with it, I wonder, who's going to call 10 million Americans and tell them they don't have a choice?
At Provident Bank, you'll find financial solutions that fit your life. Because our personal accounts come with flexibility and options, you'll find more time for what's important. Because your business is important to us, we'll help you develop solutions for your business now and down the road. And because we're devoted to helping the community, we'll work together so your neighborhood prospers. Because at Provident, we're totally committed to helping you create endless possibilities. Provident Bank. What can we do for you?
How do you decide where to find the best auto information? Where can you find local car dealers? Where do you turn for car repairs? All of these and many other questions can be answered by one source. Visit dccarguide.com to narrow down your choices. Learn where your closest car dealers are, where to get a good sound system, how to find your nearest repair shop, and more. Let us help you make your car-related decisions so you can get on with your life. dccarguide.com. All about cars.
Thanks. Come back again.
Here we go. Get the action going.
About time you got a new TV. Thank you, gentlemen.
Folding seats, loads of space. If you love it, Chrysler PT Cruiser's got a way to hold it.
It's not gonna fit. Oh.
Now, through February 28th, get a $2,500 cash allowance on any PT Cruiser.
CNN. This is CNN.
We have a breaking news story to report. The famed cartoonist, the artist Al Hirschfeld, whose graceful, fluid caricatures captured the essence of performers from Charlie Chaplin to Jerry Steinfeld, at least according to the Associated Press, is now reportedly dead. He was 99 years old. Many of us, of course, enjoyed his caricatures over the years, most recently in the New York Times, the New Yorker, other publications. Hirschfeld had his first drawings, according to the AP, published in the 1920s, continued on right into this new century. We're told he died at his home. That, according to his wife, Louise, quoted by the Associated Press. Al Hirschfeld, 99 years old, is dead. The world is sending the Bush administration a strong and widespread message in cities and towns across Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and North America. Demonstrations took place to protest a possible U.S.-led war against Iraq. In Washington, for example, over the weekend, protesters braved the chilling temperatures to show their opposition to war. Organizers of the event estimated the crowd at 500,000 people. U.S. Capitol Police said the crowd was between 30 and 50,000. Numbers obviously very much in dispute. Police arrested 16 protesters who marched on the White House yesterday. In the Lebanese capital of Beirut, thousands of protesters gathered from throughout the Arab world to take a stand for peace. Among them was a British member of Parliament, George Galloway. And in Turkey, thousands staged a demonstration as General Richard Myers, the chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, arrived to push for Turkish help in the event of war. Polls show 80% of Turks oppose another conflict right next door. Protests also took place in the Philippines, Pakistan, Zimbabwe, Ireland, Iceland, Moscow, Syria, Cairo, and many other cities around the world. Every day we see more men and women heading off to the Persian Gulf for possible war. And the protests, as we just saw, seem to be getting louder as well. But how does America really feel? Joining us now, Gallup poll editor-in-chief Frank Newport. Frank, thanks very much for joining us. All this war talk beginning to have any effect on the concerns of the American public, at least based on your most recent polls?
Indeed, Wolf, I would say yes. Satisfaction with the way things are going is now at 42%, and that's a point lower than we've seen before, and actually the lowest we've seen in about 6 or 7 years. And look at this. When we ask Americans what's the most important problem facing the country, war, the prospect of war, the fear of war has now jumped up, as you can see. I just compared this to 3 months ago in October, to 31% of Americans spontaneously say the prospect of war, that's Iraq, could be North Korea, is the #1 problem facing the country. The number who mentioned terrorism specifically has dropped down to 10%. The other big concern, of course, that remains steady, but still there, is the economy. The CNN Time poll just released a few days ago, Wolf, also asked, is war inevitable? You can see a majority of Americans said yes to that. It was over 6 out of 10 Americans, and I think that's part of what's eating into the psyche of Americans at this point. Wolf?
A big issue, as you well know, Frank, is the whole way the United States deals with the UN in this possible showdown with Iraq. What is the public saying as far as we can tell?
Well, I've reviewed a lot of polls on that topic. Now, keep in mind that a majority of Americans support the concept of military action to remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq. That's our basic question at CNN, USA Today, and Gallup. We've been asking actually for over a decade. But poll after poll shows that the American public wants the United States to slow down, get allies involved, and get the United Nations involved. I've reviewed several of those. Our CNN USA Today Gallup poll found a slight majority said, if the UN inspectors don't find anything, give them more time. As you can see, a Newsweek poll that was done said 60% said take more time rather than hurry into war. A Pew poll found of those who favored military action, majority said attack only, that is, the United States should attack only if major allies agree. So all of the public opinion data from the American public, Wolf, seems to suggest that the public says, hold on, wait till there's allied United Nations agreement before initiating military action.
Frank Newport of the Gallup poll, we always learn something important from you. Thanks very much. Let's go to the United Nations now. The Secretary of State is just wrapping up some meetings he's had at the UN Security Council. I believe he's speaking right now.
So far as Iraq is concerned, the leading rogue state, we all in the Security Council look forward to the reports from Dr. Blix and Dr. El Baradar, which will be put before the Security Council a week today. I can't anticipate those reports. They're not mine, but matter for the inspectors. But what I can say is that when 1441 was passed on the 8th of November, the international community unanimously required Iraq fully to comply with all the obligations there set out, and also said in the closing paragraph 13 of that resolution, and I quote, that serious consequences would follow if Iraq failed to comply. So time for Iraq is running out, and Iraq must stop this cat and mouse game. I'm unimpressed with what they have done today, finding a few more shells, offering a bit more cooperation. Because the simple truth is they should have been cooperating in this way from the very minute that Resolution 1441 was passed. A couple of questions. Thank you.
The fact is, it's high time that the rogue states are listed rather than just using ambiguity of rogue states. And secondly, those who are frontline allies against terrorism, the way they are being treated, are you satisfied that they are being treated as allies in the real sense?
Well, the Security Council, on a case-by-case basis, does indeed identify states which are failing to meet their clear international obligations. And the one at the top of that list is Iraq. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Something to the effect that there's a moment where patience will have to come when patience runs out. It seems as that moment is approaching with Iraq. Some countries like France are saying that any unilateral action without a United Nations resolution has no international legitimacy. Your country strongly prefer a resolution. Now, where does that leave us?
Well, Security Council Resolution 1441 sets out very clearly the process to be adopted if there is evidence either in the hands of the inspectors or of member states of any further material breach by Iraq. And there has to be further reports and then a very prompt meeting of the Security Council. That will happen. Our preference is for a second Security Council resolution, but we have to reserve the right, as we did over Kosovo, if the second resolution cannot be achieved. Two last questions. Yes, sir.
What exactly do you think, or do you want the Iraqis to do before you say we are satisfied, we're not going to war?
We want the Iraqis fully to comply with the very clear obligations, which they know about, set out in 1441. Last one, please. Yeah.
Your government has said in the past that perhaps the inspections could go on a little bit longer. Do you think that the inspectors, as Mr. Blix has said, need more time, and are you willing to wait a little bit longer?
Obviously, we take very careful account of what the inspectors have said and may say in the future. We wait their reports to the Security Council on next Monday with very great interest. Thank you very much indeed.
Wrapping up the Security Council meeting, British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw addressing reporters, soon to step up to the podium. Secretary of State Colin Powell will bring that to you live. Live from starts right now.
Showdown, Iraq. Saddam Hussein's government tells Iraqi scientists to talk with inspectors, but will Baghdad really cooperate?
We had to drive through the fire. The trees were on fire.
Firestorm down under. Homes destroyed, lives shattered, and the threat is not over yet.
And I had to get out, and all I could grab was the 2 cats and ran for it.
E-filing, free filing, and the paper chase. What you need to know about some new options for filing your income tax return. Celebrating the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. We'll take you to the neighborhood that shaped the man and gave him the dream.
As a kid, he threw the Atlanta Daily World. He had a little paper route. He lived just down the street.
CNN's live from Modesto, Washington, New York, Athens, Ankara, and other datelines around the globe.
It's 1 p.m. here in the East, 10 a.m. out west. Hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Also this hour, speculation swirls about Scott Peterson. We'll go live to Modesto, where the big question is, did he have anything to do with the disappearance of his pregnant wife? Plus, a heartbreaking medical mistake. A woman gets a double mastectomy after doctors tell her she has cancer. But it turns out they were wrong. But first, this news alert. Is Iraq's leader up for an open-ended vacation? Talk persists today of a plan to avoid war by sending Saddam Hussein into permanent exile. The United States is saying it might be a good idea, but Iraq says forget it. Guess who's heading up the Human Rights Commission? Ding, ding, ding. You're right. It's Muammar Gaddafi's Libya. Washington objects to the UN decision, citing Libya's long record of alleged abuses. Under cover of darkness, anti-terror police launch a raid on a London mosque. 7 men are arrested in Britain's biggest anti-terrorism sweep since the attacks of September 11th. Police raids have picked up pace since the deadly poison ricin was found this month in a London apartment. Pursuing the dream, much of the nation stops for a day remembering the life of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. At a service in his native Atlanta, King's widow asks world leaders to settle their differences peacefully. First, though, the showdown with Iraq. Another pledge from Baghdad today to help the weapons inspectors. But the United States is warning the inspections cannot last forever. And late this morning, Great Britain announced a major troop deployment. All this occurring as the clock ticks toward a possible deadline 1 week from today. We'll begin in Athens, Greece. CNN's Richard Roth there, along with 2 major players who've just visited Baghdad. Richard?
Yes, Hans Blix and Mohammed al-Baradei, the lead international arms inspectors on Iraq, are headed here to a hotel on the outskirts of Athens after a flight from Baghdad. They left there several hours ago. The 2 men representing the UN working out a 10-page, 10-item agreement with the Iraqi government. Is it peace in our time, to quote a former U.S. president? Well, not so fast. One of the points says that Iraq will encourage scientists to have interviews with the UN in private. This is something the UN has been trying to achieve. Baghdad has been reluctant to grant this. Also, access to all sites. A couple of days ago, the United Nations weapons inspectors searched some homes. Scientists were upset, so was the government. Chief Inspector Hans Blix is pleased with this agreement.
We had the other day also a visit to the home of a private of a scientist, and some documents were found in that. We think that confirmed our view that we must go to private sites, because there have been stated that some of these sites have documents, and it was proven then. Now, the Iraqi side have said that they will encourage people and that also to give access to their houses. So and there will be other private homes, private sites in the country, like industries and farms and whatnot. But the same will apply, that the Iraqi side will encourage people to open up also for private sites.
So the Iraqi government will encourage scientists to hold interviews in private with UN officials, and those talks possibly
Richard Roth, we're going to have you stand by. We're going to go back to the Security Council meeting that just got out, and Secretary of State. Actually, that's Richard Roth, but there we go. Secretary of State Colin Powell addressing reporters. Let's listen in.
Leading it as presidency of the council. You have followed the proceedings, and you will see the resolution, so I'll take whatever questions you might have.
Mr. Secretary, do you feel the United States has to come back to the Security Council for another resolution to act militarily? And if I can ask a second question.
No, let's do one at a time. As 1441 lays out clearly, Iraq has an obligation to provide to the inspectors all the information that they need to do their job. Iraq has an obligation to have submitted a complete, accurate declaration. Iraq has an obligation to create conditions within Iraq so the inspectors can do their work and not guess at where things might be. And so far, Iraq is not complying with the obligations it has under 1441. I noted that today Dr. Blix and Dr. Al-Baradei have made a statement that they've gotten a little more from Iraq, but it's just more of the same. Only under pressure does Iraq respond. And so we will anxiously await the Chief Inspector's report next Monday, and then I think the Council has to examine Iraq's behavior against the requirements of 1441 and make a judgment as to what should happen next. I will not say now, I will not prejudge now what the Council might do with respect to a second resolution or what have you. Let's wait and see what the inspectors say.
You just made a few comments about appreciating Pakistan for its role in as a frontline ally against terrorism. But the fact is that people of Pakistan don't think that they are being rewarded or they are being appreciated more than lip service in this matter. Pakistanis in America are being targeted for racial profiling, for immigration purposes and all that. Is that the reward to an ally who has been on the front line twice against Afghanistan?
I think we have done a great deal for Pakistan over the last roughly 16 months. Since 9/11, we have removed a lot of obstacles to trade. We have provided Pakistan with additional access to markets. We have provided Pakistan with economic assistance and various forms of relief. We have been in close touch with the Pakistani government. I think we provided some assistance in defusing the crisis of last year between Pakistan and India. I do know, however, that our registration procedures and SEERS that applies to a number of countries is having a negative effect. I have discussed this with President Musharraf and with Foreign Minister Kasuri, but I think one has to appreciate that the United States has an obligation to secure our borders, and the purpose of these procedures is not to target anyone or to intimidate anyone. It's to get a better understanding of who is in our country, and we welcome people coming. We welcome people to America. We have to secure our border, but we want to make sure our doors are open. And so those individuals who are here and who are here legally with proper documentation have nothing to fear from these registration procedures. There are some who do have concerns, and I encourage them to step forward, register, and resolve whatever out-of-status situation they may be in. There is a certain risk to that, but nobody should see this as something targeted against Pakistan. It's an effort to know who is in our country and to secure our borders.
Your words in front of the Security Council today sounded like an ultimatum to the members of the Security Council, sort of fish or cut bait. Are you telling everyone that the U.S. will go unilaterally, and did you mean to make an ultimatum to the Council members?
What I was responding to were some comments that have been made by other Security Council members in the course of the debate, and the point I was making was that the Security Council has a responsibility under 1441 to bring Iraq into compliance with its obligations to the international community. And I wanted there to be no mistake about this, and time is running out. There's no question that Iraq continues not to understand the seriousness of the position that it's in. And this is the time for it to realize that we will not just allow Iraq to frustrate the will of the United Nations, of the international community. If the United Nations is going to be relevant, it has to take a firm stand with respect to Iraq's continuing disregard of its obligations under 1441 and other resolutions. Terry?
But Mr. Blix and some other council members, today the Chinese foreign minister said that this is just the beginning, that today's finding of more chemical warheads, this agreement, and the 27th report is just the beginning. How do you reconcile this with the opinion of
It's very easy to reconcile. This is not the beginning. They have known for years how many chemical weapons warheads they had. And so we had to discover, the inspectors had to discover another cache of them last week. And then suddenly today or yesterday, the Iraqis say, oh, by the way, we found 4 more. They know what they have. It is their obligation to come forward. And we cannot let them dribble this information and dribble these items out for as long as they choose to in an effort to thwart the will of the international community. Yes.
On another issue, if I could, while we have you, on North Korea, what are you hearing from the people across the table? When would you like Security Council to get involved in North Korea? And how are you going to assuage the fears of their neighbors, specifically China, perhaps Russia, that this issue is not yet ripe for the Security Council?
There is solidarity within the international community reflected in the vote of the Board of Governors of the IAEA 2 weeks ago, 35 nations condemning North Korea for its actions with respect to nuclear proliferation. I saw that solidarity reflected in the conversations that I've had here today. North Korea has chosen to ignore the resolution from the IAEA and to dismiss it. And I think the IAEA, therefore, has an obligation to refer the matter to the Security Council for the Security Council to make its own judgment as to what it wishes to do. I'm in close consultation with all of my colleagues in the region as well as on the Security Council, and we are pursuing diplomatic approaches to the solution to this problem. As President Bush has said repeatedly, we have no intention of invading or attacking Iraq, and we're looking for a diplomatic solution. And there have been some interesting elements that have come forward. Yes. Yes.
A few months ago, when President Bush came to the United Nations, to what extent is your department under pressure from other parts of the administration to take a more stringent line on Iraq now?
We are unified within the administration. We made it clear. The international community said, bring this to the United Nations. President Bush did that. He did that in a powerful speech in September. That was followed by Resolution 1441. The pressure is on Iraq. Iraq has the responsibility right now to avoid a conflict, to avoid a war. It would be a very simple matter for this regime to come clean, recognize that we will not be deterred from our obligations to the world to disarm this regime of its weapons of mass destruction. And so all of the eyes of the world should be on what Saddam Hussein and Iraq does in order to comply with the will of the United Nations. There's no disagreement within the American administration. Yes. Not you, sir. Back there.
There seems to be a lot of disagreements here among you, Mr. Foreign Secretary of Germany or France, about second resolution, about compliance from Iraqis. How are you going to deal with these? And the second question...
Let's stick with one, because there are a lot of people here. No, one, please. Yeah, okay. Let me answer that question. We will deal with it in the manner that we have laid out in the resolution in our discussions. Next Monday, the 2 chief inspectors will report to the council. The council will consider what they present to the council, and then there will be a debate beginning that day, and then another debate or continuation of the debate on the 29th. And I can assure you that in the days after that, there will be many conversations between me and my colleagues in the Security Council, and I suspect between heads of state and government to determine what the next steps should be, and to make a judgment as to whether or not Iraq is disarming. If Iraq is disarming, then there may be a solution to this crisis without conflict. But if Iraq is not disarming, the United Nations cannot simply turn its head away and ignore this lack of respect that Iraq has for the United Nations and the international community, and we must not be afraid to meet the challenges that are ahead. One more, I got to go. You got it.
Mr. Sharon said, the Prime Minister of Israel said over the weekend that the Europeans are biased against Israel and pro-Palestinian. Do you have a point of view on that? And he said also that the only ones that Israel agrees with is the Americans.
We are fully supportive of the quartet, which we helped create, which consists, as you know, of the United States, the Russian Federation, the United Nations, and the European Union. We have worked very hard to develop a roadmap that we believe will give us a way forward and will lead us onto a path that will result ultimately in the creation of a Palestinian state. That is President Bush's objective. And we look forward to moving ahead with our efforts. When the Israeli election is over, I think there will be an opportunity to put new energy to the peace process and to do something about the terrible situation that is affecting both people, both the Palestinians and the Israelis. Both sides are suffering. And we have to find a way forward. And we remain committed to the work of the quartet, and we remain committed to the roadmap, and we believe it provides a way forward. Thank you. Thank you.
Secretary of State Colin Powell once again addressing reporters, Security Council addressing a number of issues from Israeli-Palestinian situation to North Korea to Iraq. Nothing tremendously new. North Korea, he does make the point, no invasion is planned. He does believe a diplomatic solution can be found. Meanwhile, in Iraq continuing to not comply with the UN resolution. Secretary of State Colin Powell making a point that January 27th, still an important date. They will discuss whether it's a second resolution or one step closer to war with Iraq that will take place. Now, back to Richard Roth in Athens, Greece, where just moments ago, UN Chief Weapons Inspector Hans Blix made comments also. Richard.
Yes, obviously Secretary of State Powell and British Foreign Secretary Straw not giving any life, not letting that 10-point agreement Baghdad and the UN weapons inspectors worked out, not letting it get any oxygen before the big January 27th briefing by Hans Blix. Secretary of State Powell saying time running out for Baghdad and that there's still a lot for the Baghdad government to do. Hans Blix, Chief Weapons Inspector, and Mohammed Al-Baradei, International Atomic Energy Agency Director General, arrived here just minutes ago at an Athens hotel, outskirts of Athens. Right behind me, right behind that wall and that window and those doors, they are talking with George Papandreou, the Foreign Minister of Greece, President of the European Union during this 6-month period. Hans Blix, upon arrival, in a brief statement, made it clear there are still outstanding issues between the inspectors and the government of Iraq, including the U-2 overflights and weapons of mass destruction.
For our part, we have not had a agreement on flying the U-2 planes that we have wanted. They put up a number of conditions that were not acceptable to us. And of course, we have not really discussed the open issues, the issues that were open from the past about weapons of mass destruction. They were supposed to be answered in the 12,000 pages, and we don't think they were. And we said to the Iraqis that maybe they should provide some further information, or at least tell people where they feel there's relevant information in the 12,000 pages. So there still needs things to be done, but there were a number of points where I think we managed to make practical arrangements that are useful.
Iraq still failing to account for supplies amounts of VX, nerve agent, and anthrax, items like this, which many members on the council will be listening closely for information about when Hans Blix briefs on the 27th. He leaves Athens tomorrow morning, and Mohammed Al-Baradei heads back to the IAE office in Vienna. Kira.
Richard Roth from Athens, Greece, thank you. And you may be seeing lots more of this man. He's General Richard Myers, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, America's top official in uniform. Today, Myers has been in Turkey, which could play a key role in a war with Iraq, but is driving a hard bargain. CNN's Jane Arath is in the Turkish capital to tell us more. Jane.
Well, Kira, General Myers left Ankara saying that he had had frank and open discussions with the Turkish generals, which is usually a way of saying that there were areas of disagreement. Now, in Turkish terms, the United States is asking quite a lot. Permission to base up to 80,000 American ground forces here. But Myers told reporters that he wanted to make clear that war was not inevitable, but the point was to show Iraq that the U.S. and its allies are serious.
We're not talking about an attack on Iraq. What we're talking about, and what we've said over time, is that the U.S. has been deploying forces to the region to help reinforce the diplomatic efforts that are working through the United Nations and other means to convince the Iraqi regime of our resolve that they must do what they're called upon to do under the UN Security Council resolution.
Now, Myers made clear that Turkey was a strategic ally. He started off the day with a ceremony, met with Turkish generals, and basically listened to their concerns. Now, they have quite a few concerns. One of them is that there's a very strong anti-war sentiment here against their Iraqi neighbor, as well as fears that this could really ruin the Turkish economy further. The other is that they're not sure how they'll be compensated. Now, Turkey has made clear that it will cooperate with the U.S. It is a very strong U.S. ally, but probably not to the extent that the United States would want. Kira?
Live from Turkey, Jane Raff. Thank you. It's any woman's nightmare, but for one Wisconsin woman, it's reality. A misdiagnosis leads to a terrible mistake. Her story is coming up. Also, America pauses to honor the memory of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. On this King Day, we'll look at the controversy going on in his hometown. We'll have a live report.
Live from is brought to you by Avaya, a higher plane of communication.
Do you know these people?
Hi, I'm a guy who fixes part of your communications network.
I fixed that gray box that you call the mystery cube. What's in that thing anyway?
Me? You don't know what it is I do? You just see me around a lot.
But in the state of Avaya, multi-vendor networks don't mean multi those guys. Here you have exactly one point of accountability, even if there's more than one name on the network. That means one call, not 20, just one. Isn't that easy? Reach Avaya, a higher plane of communication.
Get an amazing PC deal now from Gateway. Buy one award-winning PC and get a second award-winning PC for free. Purchase a Gateway 700XL desktop or a Gateway 600XL notebook, and you'll get a Gateway 300S value PC for free. The Gateway 600XL notebook PC uses the mobile Intel Pentium 4 processor M.
I'll take it.
Call 1-800-GATEWAY now.
On CNN tonight.
A shocking crime. A woman charged with running her husband down. The trial of Clara Harris.
CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
This guy fell to his death wearing prescription eyeglasses. Jumpers take their glasses off.
The new TNN's got television's #1 show.
CSI. So what are you waiting for?
CSI, Mondays at 11:05 p.m. on the new TNN.
Go online and swap CSI trading cards with other fans of the show. Order Cox high-speed internet today.
Some of the rarest, most beautiful, and most sought-after gold coins in history were not even known to exist until a few short years ago. But now, Monaco Financial, one of the nation's leading rare coin firms, announces the availability of a very limited number of truly historic and truly magnificent gold coins minted during the 1850s California Gold Rush. These rare $20 gold double eagles, private assayer, and territorial gold coins, and more, are now available for acquisition by those who can appreciate this historic numismatic opportunity. Call Monaco Financial now for this free catalog of rare gold coins and other treasure recovered from the 1857 shipwreck of the SS Central America. Call 1-800-283-6161 now for your free Monaco Financial Gold Rush Treasure Catalog. That's 1-800-283-6161. Own a piece of history. Call Monaco for your free catalog now.
We can start it. Remembering the Dream in Denver, Colorado. Parades taking place all across the United States. This one in downtown Denver. Pictures coming to us via KMGH. Live pictures of the Martin Luther King Day Parade. Now, a day of remembrance and rededication. That's what we're talking about. Church services and ceremonies are being held across the nation to Martin
mark Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The major service is at Dr. King's Church, Ebenezer Baptist in Atlanta. That's where we find CNN's Brian Cabell. Brian.
Good afternoon, Kira. The centerpiece of any King Day celebration here in Dr. King's hometown, Atlanta, is this service at Ebenezer Baptist Church. It's not your usual service in that it lasted almost 3 hours. It just concluded about 10-15 minutes ago. It was an old-time service in that you heard Kumbaya. They also concluded with We Shall Overcome. Among the speakers today, surprisingly enough perhaps, was Governor Sonny Perdue. He had some very kind words for Dr. Martin Luther King, but he himself is the center of controversy because he has suggested very recently that Georgians be allowed to vote on whether to bring back the old, controversial Georgia flag. The old Georgia flag, prominently featuring the Confederate battle emblem, may have been voted out by the state legislature 2 years ago, but its boosters still fly it high. Many Georgians have never accepted the new flag with its tiny battle emblem.
This change that was made in 2001 was just basically shoved down the people's throat by just a very few people, and we believe that the people of this state should have some expression of what they want to represent them.
The change in flags was engineered by former Governor Roy Barnes, an attempt to finally lay this contentious issue to rest. But it backfired on Barnes because his Republican opponent last year, Sonny Perdue, campaigned on the pledge to give Georgians a voice on the new flag, keep it or drop it. Perdue won in an upset. Now he's keeping his pledge.
What I want is for the majority of Georgians to speak in a way that sends a clear signal to the citizens of the state that that's their choice.
He supports a non-binding referendum on the flag with the expectation that the legislature would then abide by the will of the voters. If the old flag were reinstated, with its history not only of the Confederacy but of segregation, some here fear a return to racial strife.
Probably would set off a boycott, economic boycott by the NAACP and other civil rights organizations of Georgia, would have a major economic impact on the city of Atlanta and other parts of Georgia.
I think many organizations, groups that hold conferences, sports groups will probably boycott the state. People don't want to be identified with the dark past.
Now that the church service has ended, people are gathering in the streets of Atlanta. This is outside Ebenezer Baptist Church. A couple miles from here, there will be thousands marching through the streets. They will end up here at Ebenezer Baptist Church. Kind of a carnival atmosphere in a sense. You can buy fried fish here or Polish sausage, buy T-shirts. But again, this is a serious, somber day for most Atlantans because this is, after all, the hometown of Dr. Martin Luther King, who lived his childhood here and he pastored here as well. Back to you, Kira.
A lot of tremendous history there. Brian Cabell, thank you so much. President and Mrs. Bush attended a King Day service at a predominantly black church in Landover, Maryland. The holiday coincides with a spirited controversy over the Bush administration's stance on affirmative action. Our White House correspondent Dana Bash joins us now live from the White House. Dana?
Hi, Kira. Well, that's right. The president didn't go too far from here. He went to a town called Glen Arden, Maryland, where he attended the First Baptist Church there. It is, as you said, a predominantly African-American church. He spent some time there. He had a closed roundtable session, but he also attended and spoke at a church service. He got a round of applause, a standing ovation. There was also a standing ovation for his national security advisor, Condoleezza Rice. She accompanied him on that trip. Now, the president talked about the civil rights leader's vision for a society of equality and justice, but he admitted that the nation isn't there yet.
Even though progress has been made, there's more to do. There are still people in our society who hurt. There's still prejudice holding people back. There's still a school system that doesn't elevate every child so they can learn. There's still a need for us to hear the words of Martin Luther King to make sure the hope of America extends its reach into every neighborhood across this land. So it's fitting we're here in a church that has got ministries aimed at healing those who hurt.
Now, Kira, this is all against a backdrop of a decision that the White House made last week that really angered African-American leaders and Hispanic leaders. That decision, it was to file a brief opposing an affirmative action program at the University of Michigan. The White House, the president saying that he didn't agree with the idea that it was essentially unconstitutional, that it was essentially quotas, which the administration opposes. One of his top advisors Secretary of State Colin Powell yesterday said that he respectfully disagrees with his boss, said that he is a strong proponent of affirmative action, and said that he has had lots of discussions with the president and told him of his feelings. Kira?
Dana Bash live at the White House. Thank you. Straight ahead, a family affair drawing national attention while Laci Peterson's family is in anguish over the pregnant woman's disappearance. They must also deal with speculation that her husband might be involved. A live report coming up.
Refinancing your mortgage is fast and easy with Ditech.com.
At Ditech, we refinanced our home at a lower interest rate, and we also took out an equity line of credit to have available for future use, and we were very, very happy.
If you're thinking about refinancing your mortgage, call or log on to Ditech.com for today's low fixed rate.
I would highly recommend Ditech to others because the process was so quick and easy, and the people were great.
Ditech.com. Call 1-800-71-FIXED.
On CNN tonight.
Caught on tape, a shocking crime that gripped the nation. A woman charged with running her husband down. How could this happen? Take an inside look at the trial of Clara Harris.
Don't miss Connie. CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
A CNN exclusive. Shocking evidence of U.S. and European companies selling chemicals to Iraq. And CNN's Richard Roth was the first newsman to get the story. For the best in real reporting, stay with CNN.
Tonight on CNN Primetime at 8, she's charged with running her husband down inside the Clara Harris trial. At 9, new questions surrounding the disappearance of Laci Peterson. And at 10, the I Have a Dream speech in its entirety. CNN Primetime tonight.
Expanding the search, the husband of Laci Peterson spent part of the weekend distributing leaflets to volunteers in the Los Angeles area. Peterson, who was pregnant, went missing Christmas Eve and has been the subject of an extensive search. CNN's Paul Verkaman now live in Modesto. Hi, Paul.
Police department, you talked about those leaflets or flyers. They look just like this one, smaller versions of it. And this is the picture and the image that has been haunting Modesto, Laci Peterson missing. And you see that handwriting, the reward up to $500,000. Police in Modesto not talking this weekend, although they have been searching surrounding areas, including bodies on water, for any sign of Laci Peterson. Also keeping a very low profile, Scott Peterson, her husband. He was seen earlier today changing a lock at his house after a reported break-in. Now, Scott Peterson, as you said, did head down to the Los Angeles area, down the freeway here. You go down the 99, then the 5. He went to L.A. to hand out those flyers. He wasn't saying much. One thing he did say, though, he answered a question. Why Los Angeles and not Modesto?
If you go to Modesto, you see in every store, every corner, there's posters for everywhere. We've been working on that for 26 days. We simply have to expand the geographical area. So we'll do it here, we'll do it in San Diego next weekend, and we'll continue to expand until we find her.
Now, a lot of innuendo surrounds this case. You may have heard that friends of Laci Peterson said that her parents were told by Modesto police that Scott Peterson has a girlfriend. Well, Scott Peterson's side of the family staunchly denies any of these rumors.
I have no knowledge of that. I haven't seen the pictures. I just, you know, our family and the Rocha family continues to believe that Scott in no way had anything to do with Laci's disappearance.
Now back here live, Laci Peterson has been missing almost a month now, the anniversary coming this week. Last seen on, of course, Christmas Eve, as you've heard. But this just becomes more and more frustrating as each day comes and there are no new leads in the Laci Peterson case. Kira?
Paul Verkaman, thank you. We're sorry. Linda McDougall gets an apology, but she still had to undergo a double mastectomy that she didn't even need. It happened at United Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. McDougall was told there that she had a biopsy mix-up in the lab, and she never had cancer.
When did you find out you did not have cancer?
48 hours after the surgery.
And how did doctors tell you?
The surgeon walked into my room and told my husband and I that she had some bad news, and there was no way of telling me other than to tell me, and that's that I didn't have cancer.
So you're lying in your hospital bed after just going through this horrible surgery, and I just can't imagine what you were feeling.
Well, initially I thought, good,
because I hope you got it all. And then she said, you don't seem to understand. You never had cancer. There was a mix-up.
And you and your husband then said?
I think I was rendered speechless. I was in shock, and within moments, we were both crying. It was very difficult.
And did you ask the hospital how this happened, why it happened? How long did it take you to get over the initial shock to ask those questions?
It took a couple minutes before the surgeon continued and told me initially that slides got mixed up. And then the next day she called and said that she had done some more checking and that it was more than that.
What did the hospital tell you when you contacted the hospital about this mistake and how it could have happened?
Well, 3 separate people, including 2 physicians, failed to check the names and the numbers of the patients, Linda McDougall and one other person. And they switched the names on the slides with the pathology sheets. They told some poor woman that she had no cancer at all and told Linda that she did.
Quickly, about the other woman, did she eventually undergo a double mastectomy herself?
We don't know. We have not been told that by the hospital.
It's been 7 months since this procedure. Why did you wait so long before going public about this?
I've had a lot of issues just dealing with it. It's taken me 7 months to get to a point where I can really talk about it. I'm still infected. I can't continue with reconstruction.
Linda McDougall is considering legal action. She's telling her story just a week after President Bush proposed a $250,000 limit on damage awards in medical malpractice cases. We've got a story that's right on the money coming up straight ahead. A new system designed to take some of the sting out of filing your income tax return. It can save you time and money. Find out whether it's right for you.
What can handlebars teach us about financial relationships? You have to reach out to make them work. They're most valuable when faced with the unexpected. Wisdom is everywhere. Uncommon wisdom is knowing how to apply it. Wachovia Securities. Talk to us.
Looks like this intern's moving up.
Promotion?
Oh yeah, I'm on the fast track. Corner office, parking space. I totally deserve it.
How do you figure?
Well, look what I've learned. Dell helps people build their perfect PC. They make it easy to order, and they have award-winning 24/7 service and support. You'll probably be reporting to me. Check it out. This is to notify you that our latest promotional offer is a free CD burner when you buy a Dell PC.
That's great. A PC customized for you and free stuff.
So no parking spot.
Call or go online now and get a Dimension desktop with a flat panel display for just $5.99 after a $100 mail-in rebate. America's favorite PC gives you everything you see here. Keyboard, mouse, speakers, and an awesome flat panel display. And right now, you'll get a free CD burner. Get great deals on notebooks, too. Dude, you're getting a Dell.
Oh, life on the fast track.
Your perfect PC is easy to buy, easy to own, easy as Dell.
Introducing new America Online 8.0. With hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
You've got mail.
With 8.0, I can customize my email.
AOL's new parental controls I can set up for each one of my children.
Now AOL searches are faster than ever with Google. The customer service is free and it's 24 hours a day.
Call now and get 1,025 free hours for 45 days. There's no commitment and you don't even need a credit card.
America Online has so much more.
New AOL 8.0 with hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
Now a great break for millions of taxpayers. Some of you will be able to file your tax returns online this year for free. The program is part of a partnership between the IRS and a private consortium. With more on this free e-filing, Lauren Young with Smart Money Magazine joins us live from New York. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Kara.
All right, now it sounds sort of too good to be true, so let's hammer this all out. And first of all, tell us exactly what Free File Alliance is.
Well, it's an alliance of a bunch of different software companies, and some of them you're going to know, H&R Block, the people who put out TurboTax. They have all gotten together to provide 60% of all the taxpayers out there, that was the idea, with free filing.
Okay, so who can do this and who can't? Let's start with who this is good for.
That's an excellent question. It's kind of odd who can, who can't. The IRS is really trying to go after people with lower incomes to get them to file online. So a lot of the software, a lot of the free programs, there's I think 13 partners altogether, they are for people who have an income of roughly $33,000 or less. But active military members can also file for free, as well as people who are over the age of 50 and people who have an income above $100,000. So there's lots of different stipulations, but it's definitely not for everyone.
All right, who is it not for sure?
Definitely people in that middle income range. And I should say that if you're married to someone who does fall into one of these categories, for example, somebody who's in the military, you will also fit in that umbrella too, assuming that you file jointly. You can go on the IRS website, it's irs.gov, and you can basically fill out a little questionnaire which will tell you if the free service is for you or not.
All right, I think, yeah, we do have that. We have it here on the screen, IRS.gov. Now, how easy is this? What do? You log on and, kind of give us a step-by-step process here.
It is really easy once you get online, once you find the website, and all you have to do usually, it's very similar to if you've used TurboTax software or TaxCut or any of the really popular ones out there. You basically fill out a little questionnaire in the beginning, and all that information is transferred. So it's not like you just sit down and you start filling out the paper form. They ask you questions, which makes it a lot easier. For example, do you have a W-2 form? How old are you? What's your Social Security number? And all that gets transferred onto the actual software. This is not going to be stored on your hard drive of your computer like it would be if you were using one of the software programs. It's going to be transferred over the internet, over a secure line, but just keep in mind that you're not keeping the data, and there's going to be a password that's going to let you get in and out of the website.
All right, you mentioned secure line, but I think that's a tremendous concern for a lot of us because, this is all major information, all of our personal information. How safe is this?
Well, 47 million people, well, not 47 million people, but there were 47 million returns filed last year online. Now, a lot of those were done over the internet. Some of them were done by phone, but haven't heard of any problems there. These are very secure lines. The companies that you're going to be sharing the data with, they are not allowed to sell your information or to give it to anyone else. It is just between you, the software provider, and the IRS, and that's it. So that's the good news. It is very secure.
What about getting audited? If you do it this way, are your chances less that you may get audited?
That's a really good question. Actually, the statistics show that people who file electronically are less likely to be audited. And incidentally, if you file for an extension, you're also less likely to be audited. I don't understand quite why, but that's what the statistics show.
And do you get a faster, does the check come to you a lot faster if you do it this way?
So much faster. And that's one of the reasons why the IRS wants people to do this is they can process your claim a lot faster. Also, remember that it's going to be more accurate because you're not doing the math in your head. You're doing it on a computer. But if you file online, you will get your return, I think it's within 10 days if you do a direct deposit. And if you do it by paper, you're not going to see that refund back for probably about 6 weeks. So definitely an incentive to file online.
All right, Lauren Young of Smart Money Magazine. Thanks a lot, Lauren.
Thank you, Kara.
In sports, you can call this year's Super Bowl the Pirate Bowl. The Tampa Bay Bucs and the Oakland Raiders head to the big game after winning their NFC and AFC championships yesterday. Our Larry Smith with CNN Sports live on set with the whole lowdown. Did you watch every single game, Larry?
I watch. I'm a sports guy, of course. It's a great excuse to watch, too, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a tough job, isn't it?
Yeah, I have to watch. It's my job. I have to watch the game. But how exciting was it, though, to watch these, all four teams, really, and the whole season. It's been so exciting. Third year in a row, we have two completely different teams in the Super Bowl. And who would ever thought Tampa Bay, 26 years of frustration, finally going away. The past 2 years getting knocked out by Philadelphia in the playoffs. And finally here, they finally get it done against the Philadelphia Eagles. And in Philadelphia, shutting down the Vet. Final football game ever played at the Vet. And yet they get it done. It's a great story.
All right, let's talk John Gruden, okay? Old team versus new team here.
Yeah, John Gruden was one of those guys that, keep in mind, it was a year ago, the Bucs gave up 4 high draft picks, 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s, and $8 million to the Oakland Raiders just to talk to Gruden. Hadn't even signed him yet, but obviously now it's a price that was worth paying. But Gruden goes to Tampa Bay, becomes just the second first-year coach ever to lead his team in the first year he's with them to the Super Bowl. The third, well, is the guy who replaced him, Bill Callahan in Oakland with the Raiders. Their big one over the Tennessee yesterday. He becomes the third first-year head coach, first time with the team, that is, to do that. And so when you look at these two teams, it's a team that you look at the Oakland offense, one of the most prolific offenses that the entire year. An offense, though, that John Gruden knows very well, but he's got that great Tampa Bay defense. It'll be fun to watch those two when those two units are on the field Sunday in San Diego.
All right, now a bit of bummer news with regard to San Diego. I mean, this is where I grew up. I saw my first football game at Jack Murphy Stadium when it was Jack Murphy Stadium. Now you're saying a little bit of economic trouble here.
Yeah, this is the final game that they will play there at Jack Murphy Stadium, which has now been named Qualcomm. Thank you to the naming rights of Qualcomm. I don't know what Qualcomm is. I'm sure somebody does. But Qualcomm Stadium, it's an older stadium, older venue. It's the third Super Bowl that it has hosted, 1988 and 1988 were the other 2 years. But it's an older stadium. There's so many new stadiums. Next year they're in Houston. They're in Jacksonville, which is a newer stadium. Detroit in 3 years. Atlanta's in the mix. Miami's got a newer stadium. Tampa Bay. And so there are all these other facilities that want to host them. Phoenix wants to get working on a new stadium as well. But they've already proposed that there's a $400 million stadium proposal that's on the table right now. The Chargers have said they're proposing to pay half that cost to stay in San Diego, but there's some city leaders that wonder if that is a good thing to do. One thing to keep in mind, though, big money when you're talking about this. 2 years ago, the game was in Atlanta. The economic impact of the Super Bowl on the state of Georgia, a study showed almost $300 million. So these are very big bucks when you get a chance to be a host city of a Super Bowl.
All right, Qualcomm, big business in San Diego, Network Solutions. Check in on that, okay, Larry?
I will. Well, I knew you would know since you're a San Diego girl.
Yeah, I'll fill you in. Larry
I'm from the
Smith.
Midwest. I wouldn't know.
That's okay. Hey, that's good, too. Larry, thank you.
Sure.
All right, straight ahead, we're going to take a walk through history. It's where Martin Luther King Jr. grew up and still a vibrant part of Atlanta. Our Bruce Burkhardt takes us there on the B-side, coming up next.
CNN's coverage of the 2003 Super Bowl is brought to you by HP. HP Technology Services and People help make more things more possible.
With the help of HP Technology and HP Services, the world's space agencies can focus on getting their explorers home safely.
Other mortgage companies are still filling out the paperwork, Ditech.com is busy processing your loan. Apply now for a low fixed-rate mortgage or cash out some of your equity. It's a whole new way to get a mortgage. Just log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED. Ditech.com, your mortgage solution delivered.
I'm saving $160 a night at this 4-star hotel.
A 3-star for $59 a night. We're saving $100 a night in New York City.
But we even got the kids in their own room. Priceline now has the guaranteed best prices at top-of-the-line hotels. Save up to 40% off other leading online sites.
I paid $55 less than at Hotels.com.
$60 less than Expedia. I told them the price.
The exact neighborhood. And even how many stars. And they found it. Now we'll stay at a hotel instead of being lost.
Top of the line. Guaranteed best price. Priceline Hotels.
Introducing new America Online 8.0. With hundreds of new features, there's never been a better time to try it.
You've got mail.
With 8.0, I can customize my email.
AOL's new parental controls I can set up for each one of my children.
Now AOL searches are faster than ever with Google. The customer service is free and it's 24 hours a day.
Call now and get 1,025 free hours for 45 days. There's no commitment and you don't even need a credit card.
America Online has so much more.
New AOL 8.0 with hundreds of new features. There's never been a better time to try it.
Now is a great time to enjoy 3 Italian classics on one dish. Our famous Mama's Trio. Homemade lasagna, zesty chicken parmigiano, and delicious hand-rolled chicken cannelloni. Romano's Macaroni Grill, making life delicious.
CNN Tonight, disturbing developments in the case of missing pregnant woman Laci Peterson. Was there another woman? Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
U.S. Education Secretary Rodney Page recently visited James W. Robinson Secondary School in honor of the presence of the C-SPAN bus. Cox Communications sponsored the event, which brought the traveling high-tech news gathering exhibit to spotlight the importance of online education resources. Secretary Page spent the day learning about the bus and talking with the students. Cox Communications is proud to support education in our community.
your friend in the digital age.
What the world needs now. I wanted a romantic getaway. He wanted it action-packed. I said someplace exotic. He said close. He wanted to dive. I wanted to dip. He wanted to play outside, and I wanted to stay inside. So we chose Sandals, the world's best all-inclusives, where love conquers all at the resorts that include it all.
Book now, save 35%. Call your travel agent or 1-800-SANDALS.
How would you like the power to change from this to this, or from that to that? Well, now you can with our best-selling Fitness Made Simple videos hosted by fitness celebrity John Bastow.
Fitness Made Simple gives you the power to change. The power to change your body, the power to change your life.
Fitness Made Simple gave Mark the power.
I'm confident with the way that I look, and the energy that I have is extraordinary.
It's not a lot of hype. It's not Hollywood. It really works.
Join the thousands of men and women who are changing their bodies and lives. Order our power package today and get the original Fitness Made Simple workout and nutrition video, plus AM/PM workouts, John's popular morning and evening exercise video for busy people of all fitness levels.
Each workout's only 10 to 15 minutes long, and you can do them all right at home.
The tapes are real and they work. The results I've gained, I simply can't put a price on.
Sold separately, each video costs $29.95, but now you can get our power package for only $29.95. That's 2 videos for the price of 1. Call now or order online at fitnessmadesimple.com.
Fitness Made Simple, bringing real results to real people.
This is CNN. This is CNN.
By now, most of us know a little about MLK's roots here in Atlanta, Georgia, how he came up under his minister father at the old Ebenezer Baptist Church. But what about his neighborhood where he grew up? What was the place like, and how did it shape the man who became a legend in the civil rights movement? Our Bruce Burkhart and his own unique view on the B-side.
Come with us and take a little walk. A stroll down Atlanta's Auburn Avenue. Sweet Auburn. Why do you give it that name?
Because it was the money place, and that's what made it sweet. There were black businesses all up and down the street, and it was a vibrant community for the black middle class. Again, the age
Alexis Scott knows her way around this neighborhood. She runs the Atlanta Daily World, the first black-owned daily newspaper in America, founded by her grandfather back in 1928. Martin Luther King once worked for the paper.
As a kid, he threw the Atlanta Daily World. He had a little paper route. He lived just down the street.
And what a street it was. Auburn Avenue, where black businesses and culture flourished during the middle part of the 20th century.
And across the street is the Atlanta Life Insurance Company.
So in this building here?
Well, they've recently sold this building, but this was their headquarters for many years. But this building here has been their headquarters for about 20 years. They built a new building, Atlanta Life Insurance Company, and it was started in 1905 by Alonzo Herndon, who was a former slave. And he created the business out of a barbershop business that he had on Peachtree Street. This block I'm more familiar with, and from my childhood in the 50s and 60s, as the block of nightclubs and a couple of big churches. And across the street was the rival Royal Peacock, which was also a place where a lot of the acts came, and it was known as the Chitlin Circuit, you know, where the black entertainers couldn't play in white clubs.
Fair to call this kind of the Harlem of the South? That might be overblown a little bit.
Well, I don't think it's overblown, but we might call, you know, Harlem the Auburn Avenue of the North.
Okay, that's what I meant to say.
That's what you meant to say.
Yeah.
But no, it definitely is the black Mecca and was the, you know, the street of dreams for the black community for the early part of the 20th century.
A few blocks further west, in Auburn Avenue's most famous landmarks, the old Ebenezer Baptist Church, the new Ebenezer, and the King Center. And in the very next block,
This is the place where Martin Luther King was born and grew up, 501 Auburn Avenue. And he spent many of his young years out here playing on the porch with, you know, his brothers and sisters.
From here, it's only 6 or 7 blocks east back to Peachtree. But when he was growing up, it seemed much further.
And then it does one of those funny things that Atlanta streets do. It becomes Lucky Street after it crosses Peachtree. I know, right, exactly. Right. And so historically, that was the way streets worked. When they were black, they had one name, and then when the neighborhood was designated white, the name of the street changed to note the change in the complexion of the neighborhood.
So Auburn became Lucky Street.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean like Auburn was Unlucky Street.
It doesn't mean that at all, no.
Though those street names remain unchanged, so much else has changed, thanks to the man who grew up on Auburn Avenue.
Our Bruce Burkhart with us now. Another interesting part, you were telling me about the Butler Street Y.
The Butler Street Y, there's so many landmarks along that street that has some history, and a lot of it doesn't have to do with MLK, but just the history of this neighborhood. Butler Street Y, when Atlanta hired its first black police officers, they had to go there to change because they weren't allowed to change in the white police station. So they had started off with 8 black police officers, and this was right after World War II. Wow. And in fact, those police officers were hired because Daddy King and Alexis's father and some other leaders in the community petitioned the city to get them to hire them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, you're also mentioning the decline of Auburn Avenue, ironically, because of desegregation.
Yeah, I mean, it's still alive and kicking and still a business and commercial district, but not what it was in its glorious day, and it's desegregation that did that as both black businesses and black customers migrated into the larger economy.
And as you were walking down, you felt a vibe.
Oh yeah, it's a great place. It's a great neighborhood, and a lot of Atlantans, you know, don't really know it too well either. I don't think, but it's just a wonderful place to soak it up.
Thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Bruce Burkhart. All right, we look forward to more good stuff.
Me too.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.
What if we looked at the world as one giant farm field? In tomorrow's global food economy, every crop will grow where it grows best. And ADM can link farmers to almost any market in the world. It's a natural way to improve agricultural efficiency, make food more affordable, and feed a hungry world.
Can you hear me?
ADM, the nature of what's to come.
My new baby's name is Max. He's waking up about now. My business partner's name is Joe.
This has everything you're looking for. It has
I see him more than I see Max. It's also my birthday. And I wouldn't mind working from home today.
Gateway PCs feature Intel Pentium 4 processors.
We didn't know what to expect or what we were going to find, and it's nice to have good news.
Family found. A sigh of relief this afternoon. A family missing since Saturday on Mount St. Helens has been found. That story straight ahead from Washington. Also ahead, Showdown Iraq. Promises from Saddam of better cooperation as Colin Powell warns the UN against backing off. And a little later, pirates in the 21st century? Yes, there are. And you won't believe what one city is doing to keep them out of port. It's 2 p.m. here in the east, 11 a.m. out west. I'm Kira Phillips. Also this hour, busted in Britain. A mosque raided. A group with possible ties to Osama bin Laden caught off guard. We're live from London with the latest. Also ahead, looking for Laci. A California community searches for one of their own. That story straight ahead. But first, this news alert. Fair trade or fantasy? Maybe both. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says permanent exile for Saddam Hussein, his family, and his cohorts would be a fair trade for a U.S. stand-down in the Persian Gulf, but he isn't holding his breath. Remember Muammar? Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi is back on the State Department's radar screen with today's election of a Libyan diplomat to head up the UN Commission on Human Rights. The U.S. maintains Libya, under Gaddafi, is a flagrant human rights abuser. What did Schmidt and Umbach know when they did know it? That's because the central issue at the military hearing to determine whether the 2 U.S. pilots will be court-martialed for mistakenly dropping a 500-pound bomb on Canadian ground troops. The Air Force claims the pilots violated orders, but their commander says their actions were not unreasonable. And the first couple visited First Baptist today, the First Baptist Church of Glenarden in Landover, Maryland. The occasion was Martin Luther King Day, and the president says while progress has been made in the quest for liberty and justice for all, there's more to do. Stand firm. That's what the U.S. is telling other members of the UN Security Council. In just a week, the leaders of the weapons inspections in Iraq are due to present another report. Some see it as the end of a long road to force Iraq to abandon its weapons of mass destruction.
We cannot be shocked into impotence because we're afraid of the difficult choices that are ahead of us. Hopefully, there will be a peaceful solution. But if Iraq does not come into full compliance, we must not shrink from the responsibilities that we set before ourselves.
And with that UN deadline approaching, Iraqi officials say weapons inspectors can go anywhere and talk to anyone they want. Critics say that should have been the policy from the beginning. Our senior international correspondent Nick Robertson monitoring all the moves live from Baghdad. Nick?
Kira, Hans Blix, the UN weapons chief, wrapped up an almost 2-day mission here to Baghdad. Just before he left, he announced 10 points of agreement with Iraqi officials. Top among those points of agreement that the Iraqi government would allow the UN inspectors to, or encourage Iraqi scientists rather, to allow themselves to be interviewed privately by the UN inspectors. Now, this has been very important to the UN inspectors. They believe that they can get key information from these scientists if they interview them privately. Now, late this evening, General Amir al-Sadi, President Saddam Hussein's top scientific advisor, told us how they'd worked out the modalities for this. He said that the inspectors, rather the scientists, hadn't felt safe about going to have interviews with the UN inspectors, that they'd got some assurances now from the UN weapons chief Hans Blix about how these interviews would be conducted. He wouldn't say what those assurances were, but he did say that they would be encouraging, not compelling their scientists to go into these interviews.
We will never compel them, but we will encourage them, as we have as have happened on several occasions. It is in our interest to answer questions relevant to Iraq's programs, past programs, and that Iraq is, as we say, is clean. Anything else, any other questions, tendentious questions, of course, it's up to them whether to respond to them or not. They will see that themselves. They are educated people and they are aware of everything.
Now, one of the other interesting points raised by General Amir al-Sadi, as everyone looks to Iraq and says the onus is on Iraq to prove that it is innocent in this case, General Amir al-Sadi said, look, we've come 50% of the way to proving we don't have weapons of mass destruction. The onus is now on you. If you have the proof, help us and show us. That proof's not forthcoming, so therefore you have to believe our story. Kira?
All right, Nick Robertson live from Baghdad. Thank you. From Baghdad to Main Street, USA, folks are protesting a possible war. At the same time, they're saying goodbye to more troops heading for duty in the Persian Gulf. Over the weekend, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was in Turkey. American forces are monitoring Iraq's northern no-fly zone from there, and the U.S. wants to station more troops in that country. But Turkey, which borders Iraq, has yet to commit. General Richard Meyer says he's not worried. Adding war is not a sure thing.
There is no decision by the President of the United States that conflict is inevitable. We hear that from time to time. That's certainly not the case.
For the most complete report on the simmering crisis of Baghdad, watch Showdown Iraq. Wolf Blitzer gets in depth on the issues each weekday at noon here in the east, 9 a.m. out west. British police staged a dramatic early morning raid on a London mosque. The operation stemmed from the recent discovery of a deadly poison. CNN senior international correspondent Sheila McVickard now joins us live with the latest. Sheila.
Kira, 18 hours after that raid began, police are still on the scene, going through the mosque, the offices at the mosque, and 2 apartments associated with the mosque. The police went into the mosque in the early hours of the morning. Avoiding areas used for prayer, they searched offices and 2 nearby apartments. Hours later, they were still removing documents and computers. Police confirmed they seized a large number of passports and credit cards, plus a stun gun and a blanks-firing pistol.
This is an intelligence-led operation, part of a national operation, following up various leads across the country.
This is the latest raid linked by police to this apartment in North London. Nearly 2 weeks ago, police found trace amounts of the toxin ricin here. That sparked fears of a biological terror attack. The police say they have been trying to track anyone known to have been in that apartment where the ricin was found, and it was those connections, they say, which led them here. 7 men have been arrested and are still being questioned. It's not known what connection, if any, the men have to the ricin plot.
It must come through the gun, and it will come through the gun, and it will always come through the gun.
Finsbury Park Mosque has been noted for its controversial cleric accused by European intelligence agencies of recruiting for extremist groups. Abu Hamza al-Masri was not among those arrested. He has always denied links to terrorist organizations. But critics say his preaching attracts radicals, even terrorists, like would-be shoe bomber Richard Reed. Monday's raid will increase pressure on the mosque to silence Abu Hamza and on Britain's Muslim community, already feeling besieged. Now, the police have got 7 days in which to continue to question those 7 men that they brought in today. 6 of them, again, are from North African origin. 1 is an Eastern European man, and it's not yet clear, Kira, what connection, if any, they have to the ricin plot or any other plot.
Sheila, any talk of any other links to other terrorist organizations?
The police have been very circumspect about this. They have not said in any way so far that they link this to Al-Qaeda or to any Algerian terrorist group, though it's known that a number of the men who are already in custody, arrested both in London and in Manchester, are Algerian. It's not clear at this stage what the connections are and who may have provided funding or indeed the technology which permitted the first group, the group that were found in the apartment in North London with traces of ricin, to manufacture the toxin.
Sheila McVicker, live from London. North Korea is stiffing the Security Council. Pyongyang has rejected Washington's proposal to take the nuclear weapons dispute to the UN Security Council for resolution. And North Korea says if the UN imposed sanctions, it would be tantamount to declaring war. Meanwhile, experts from 15 security organizations are meeting in London, and today they released an action agenda to reduce threats posed by weapons of mass destruction. Former U.S. Senator Sam Nunn is co-chairman with Ted Turner of AOL Time Warner, what's being called the Nuclear Threat Initiative. Sir, thanks for being with us.
Good to be with you.
Well, you put things in perspective. I've read your reports, and you talk a lot about the Soviet Union, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and therein lies the heart of the problem, where all the weapons of mass destruction have surfaced.
Well, that is one major source of the problem. It's not the only one, because there are nuclear research reactors in something like 20 countries at least that have highly enriched uranium that could be bomb-grade material. And the United States government worked with Russia and Yugoslavia last year to remove about 2.5 bombs worth from a place called Vincha right outside Belgrade. So everywhere there is nuclear material that could be converted to a nuclear weapon is a source, and homeland security begins for the United States and other countries by securing and helping other countries secure that weapon material and weapons wherever they may be in the world. That is the easiest place to stop terrorism, and once the material is gained by terrorists, every step from that point on is much harder for us and easier for terrorists. So this report that has been filed by today, in a 4-volume report by 15 think tanks in over 13 countries on 3 continents, the unique thing about it, there's a consensus about the threat, there's a consensus about the governmental response so far, there's a consensus about the gap, and there's a roadmap laid out here for what has to be done to protect not only U.S. security, but security of the world. So it's a very important day, and the conference indicated not only agreement by these countries, including Russia, but also agreement that there has to be speedy implementation, that there's a race on. The terrorists are racing to get these weapons of mass destruction, and we've got to be racing to stop it.
So where should the focus be? North Korea or Russia right now?
Well, it's both. We don't have the choice. You want to make sure that North Korea does not restart their reactor and generate plutonium. That is absolutely essential, because if North Korea begins an assembly line of nuclear weapons, it is extremely destabilizing and dangerous for that area and for the world. But we have to have a carrot and a stick with North Korea. There needs to be a clear line in their minds, conveyed to them perhaps quietly at this stage, but nevertheless conveyed to them as to red lights that they better not go beyond. But there also has to be a clear kind of vision laid down to the North Koreans about what cooperation would mean and what they can do in terms of benefiting their country and their people if indeed they do freeze their nuclear developments for discussion and then get rid of their nuclear programs. What we're doing in Russia in helping the Russians, and we've been doing it for 10 years, and we're asking in this report for the Europeans to step up and do a lot more, and the Japanese, to basically match what America's doing, $1 billion a year over 10 years. That is enormously important. There's also a precedent here. We call it the non-Lugar program in Russia, but there's a precedent here for North Korea, because if they do agree, after we have dialogue, that they want to go the more enlightened route and get rid of their nuclear program, then we're going to have to use something like the non-Lugar program and get help from other countries to get rid of, help them get rid of all of their nuclear infrastructure.
We'll continue to follow your global partnership and your initiative. Former Senator Sam Nunn, thank you, sir, for your time. News around the world now. Carter to Caracas. The former president is in Venezuela hoping to stop the strike that has crippled that country. 35,000 oil workers have walked off the job since the strike began in December. To Cuba now, one election, one party, the Communist Party, and all 609 candidates run uncontested. President Fidel Castro insists, though, that the weekend's election was democratic. And a footnote, one of the candidates was Juan Miguel Gonzalez, the father of the famous shipwreck boy, Elian Gonzalez. And finally, they're cleaning up in Canberra, but wildfires are still threatening the suburbs of the Australian capital. 4 people have died, 400 homes have been destroyed in recent firestorms. Still to come this hour, missing in Modesto, a community still searching for 27-year-old pregnant woman who vanished Christmas Eve. But is her husband, Scott, telling all he knows? Also ahead, resegregating schools. On this MLK Day, our Whitney Casey and what appears to be an about-face. And a little later, meet Nitro, a new weapon against worldwide terror. They're called Pups for Peace, and they really are man's best friend.
This is a tremendous boost to the protection of our people. Every suicide bomber can now understand that if he sees a dog in the vicinity, he got a problem.
Companies care about the things they make. After all, it's their business. What we care about is what a company is made of. That's our business. That's why companies that list on the New York Stock Exchange must have the integrity to meet the highest standards in the world, and why the world puts its stock in us.
On CNN tonight.
A shocking crime. A woman charged with running her husband down. The trial of Clara Harris.
CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
At the Popeyes Cajun Chicken Festival, the chicken is king.
Chef, why do people love Popeyes chicken?
I marinate each piece in a secret blend of Cajun spices. Then I batter and fry them to perfection. Booyah!
Easy, man. It's just chicken.
Security!
Now at Popeyes, get 5 pieces of Popeyes crispy Cajun chicken for just $3.99, or a 15-piece anniversary deal for only $10.99. Popeyes, the official chicken of the Washington Redskins.
Why count on Verizon Business DSL?
The meeting's been pushed up to now.
We're ready.
But they just emailed the spreadsheet.
They're here.
But they just added more pictures.
They're downloaded.
But really?
Verizon Business DSL delivers the connection that's made for your business and support you can count on. Order now for a special rebate on Verizon Business DSL. Just call 1-888-4097-DSL today.
Hey, we just look great.
Mm-hmm.
Verizon. Make progress every day. This is CNN.
News across America now. Our first stop, Van Nuys near Los Angeles. Part of the town is having a sinking feeling. This tape came in from affiliate KCBS, and as you can see, water has filled what looks to be a sinkhole. To Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where the cases of 4 murdered women are still drawing attention. About 100 people took part in a weekend rally. Police now say at least 63 killings have taken place in the Baton Rouge area, and they've remained unsolved. Lab tests, they say, have not linked the serial killer's DNA to any of the other killings. Back out west now, where an SUV belonging to fugitive cosmetics heir Andrew Luster has been found abandoned in a Santa Monica neighborhood. The great-grandson of cosmetics magnate Max Factor disappeared early this month during his trial on drug rape charges. The husband of a missing California woman is playing a very visible role in her search. Scott Peterson has been the focus of increased attention lately. Paul Verkaman brings us up to date on the investigation. Paul? All right, we're having some technical issues. We will move along. We'll try and catch up with Paul Verkaman and Modesto in just a few minutes. Now, alive and well, a family that spent 2 freezing nights on snowy Mount St. Helens is found in good condition. The Vancouver couple and their 2 young daughters left Saturday to play in the snow. They never came home. Police found their vehicle earlier this morning and followed the family's footprints in the snow. And 2 young girls are safe and warm today after spending 18 hours lost in the woods in near-freezing temperatures in Central Florida. 12-year-old Elizabeth Morrell and her 9-year-old sister Amanda got lost in the woods near Walt Disney World after wandering away from their family's campsite. The girls say they found shelter in a hollowed-out tree and huddled together for warmth.
During the night, we saw these helicopters. We were trying to get their attention, but we couldn't. So basically, we just bundled up together in our jackets and stuff. Just to keep warm. Not really. It was really cold. I had frost on my jacket early in the morning. My toes and hands were numb and stuff. Same with her. She could barely even stand up. She was so cold.
The girls were found walking on an access road about a quarter mile from their family's camp. They're in good condition. Still to come this hour, the resegregation of America's schools. A new study says it's a trend. So what's being done about it? Our Whitney Casey, as CNN's Live From, continues.
Refinancing your mortgage is fast and easy with Ditech.com.
At Ditech, we refinanced our home at a lower interest rate, and we also took out an equity line of credit to have available for future use, and we were very, very happy.
If you're thinking about refinancing your mortgage, call or log on to Ditech.com for today's low fixed rate.
I would highly recommend Ditech to others because the process was so quick and easy, and the people were great.
Ditech.com. Call 1-800-71-FIXED.
What's going on? I think they're having computer problems. Why don't we ever seem to have computer problems?
Well, we have Dell's. They're super reliable. And if there is a problem, Dell's service and support can get us up and running right away.
That's not fair.
Get the performance and reliability your business needs today and tomorrow with a Dell Dimension desktop with an Intel Pentium 4 processor for just $499, or Dell Business Notebook starting at just $999.
Ellen, could we have an occasional computer problem?
Because our computers work, that means we won't be working this weekend.
She's got a point.
Get great deals on Dell Business Systems, like a Dimension desktop with an Intel Pentium 4 processor for $499. Right now, double your memory for free, or get a $100 mail-in rebate on select systems.
So you're going to be free this weekend, then?
I'm sorry, what?
What?
Easy to buy, easy to own, easy as Dell.
Tonight on CNN Primetime, at 8, she's charged with running her husband down. Take an inside look at the trial of Clara Harris. Then at 9, seeking answers to new questions surrounding the disappearance of Laci Peterson on Larry King Live. And at 10, a rare and extraordinary broadcast, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in its entirety, plus son Dexter King on Newsnight. Connie Chung, Larry King, Aaron Brown. It's all part of CNN Primetime tonight.
10 years ago today, Bill Clinton was sworn in as the 42nd President of the United States. Al Gore was sworn in as Vice President. And 5 years ago today, a jury was selected in Amarillo, Texas, to hear a multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed by cattlemen against talk show host Oprah Winfrey. They sued over comments made on her program about beef safety.
Last year, Yasser Arafat called for open presidential elections for the Palestinian people. Those elections would have been held today, but they've been postponed by the continued presence of the Israeli military. Our Michael Holmes had an exclusive interview with the Palestinian leader, and they talked about the present conflict and the future in the Middle East. Michael.
Hi, Kira. Yes, it was a rare interview. In fact, with Yasser Arafat, he hasn't sat down for a one-on-one interview in several months. We covered things like the elections. He's obviously disappointed that they haven't taken place. He said he was looking forward to some competition in the race for his own job as president. But as you pointed out, Israeli troops are in most of the West Bank. The elections could not be organized, logistically impossible. Israel, of course, saying the troops are only there because of continued suicide bombings inside of Israel. On the issue of Iraq, he warned the U.S. don't go to war with Iraq without a UN mandate, and unless it's under the auspices of the UN. He said that would be a mistake. He spoke about the chances of a resumption of a peace process in this very troubled area. He said that would only be likely if he could find a partner for peace, someone, he said, like Yitzhak Rabin, the former Israeli Prime Minister with whom he signed the Oslo Accords. He also spoke about corruption. There's been allegations that Yasser Arafat has squirreled away hundreds of millions of dollars, in fact, billions of dollars in bank accounts around the world. He said, show me the evidence. He said, my books are open to the IMF, the World Bank, and anyone else who wants to look. He denied that allegation. He also denied that Palestinian Authority is not doing enough to stop suicide bombers reaching their targets. He said, we don't have a security apparatus. He said, Israel is in charge of security, but we do what we can, passing on information and the like. Now, he also talked about leadership and his own position. There's been a lot of calls for him from the U.S. and Israel just to step aside. They say they can't deal with him when it comes to a peace process of any sort. He said he's not going anywhere, but he made a point of saying that there is a new crop of young politicians in his own Fatah movement, and he said that he called it a very democratic movement and said there would be a replacement for him, but it wouldn't be when Israel or the U.S. decides it would be. And he said that leaving his post at this stage is simply not on his agenda, Kira.
All right, Michael Holmes, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Get an amazing PC deal now from Gateway. Buy one award-winning PC and get a second award-winning PC for free. Purchase a Gateway 700XL desktop or a Gateway 600XL notebook, and you'll get a Gateway 300S value PC for free. The Gateway 600XL notebook PC uses the mobile Intel Pentium 4 processor M.
I'll take it.
Call 1-800-GATEWAY now.
What can handlebars teach us about financial relationships? You have to reach out to make them work. They're most valuable when faced with the unexpected. Wisdom is everywhere. Uncommon wisdom is knowing how to apply it. Wachovia Securities. Talk to us.
At 5 p.m. Eastern today, most of the NBA players are African American, but none of the principal owners were until now. I'm Wolf Blitzer. On Martin Luther King Jr. Day, join me with new owner Robert Johnson and Commissioner David Stern. Today, 5 p.m. Eastern on CNN.
The husband of a missing California woman is playing a very visible role in her search. Scott Peterson has been the focus of increased attention lately. Paul Verkaman brings us up to date now on the investigation. Paul?
Well, I'm standing in front of the Modesto Police Department. Just a minute ago, a police spokesman told me that there indeed was a burglary at Scott Peterson's home and Laci Peterson's home over the weekend. They're not quite sure exactly what was going on there. They characterize this as a bizarre burglary and say that nothing significant was taken. Earlier today, you could see that Scott Peterson was changing a lock on his gate after this, what we would call a break-in at this point. He had returned from Southern California yesterday. He was in the Los Angeles area. He turned up there with other family members and friends, and they were passing out flyers trying to get the word out on Southern California streets about Laci's disappearance. Scott Peterson, while he was shadowed by the news media, didn't have a whole lot to say. He did, however, ask a question, and that is, why was he in Los Angeles instead of Modesto.
If you go to Modesto, you see in every store, in every corner, there's posters for everywhere. We've been working on that for 26 days. We simply have to expand the geographical area. So we'll do it here, we'll do it in San Diego next weekend, and we'll continue to expand until we find it.
Now back here in Modesto, as I said just a short time ago, Scott Peterson was seen earlier this morning changing a lock on his Modesto family home in what police are describing as a bizarre burglary, and one in which nothing significant was taken. They also say that this is not some sort of smoking gun. They do not believe it is a smoking gun connected with Laci Peterson's disappearance. Reporting live from Modesto, I'm Paul Verkammen. Now back to you in Atlanta.
Paul, meanwhile, what's the response been or the feedback from the family's point of view about what Scott Peterson is doing, specifically from Laci Peterson's family?
Well, that depends on, yes, which side of the family you are talking about. Friends of Laci Peterson say that her family is distraught and that they've suggested in the past that Scott Peterson may have been lying to them, especially after the talk from several of Laci's friends that police told Laci's parents that Scott has a girlfriend. So they want Scott Peterson to come forth and be more visible in all this, and they say they suspect that perhaps he might have been lying and been telling lies all along. So we'll have to see what happens. That family that once stood so unified now appears to have a major rift, and we'll have to wait and see, of course, what they do in the coming days.
Live from Modesto, Paul Verkammen, thank you. Terror arrest in Britain. Before dawn, police raided a London mosque that believed to be hosted for Islamic radicalism. When helicopters circling overhead, they arrested 7 people. The raid stemmed from the recent discovery of the deadly poison ricin. More open doors for inspectors. Iraq vows to encourage scientists to cooperate with UN weapons inspectors. Today, inspectors visited an alcohol company, a private farm, and a site linked to Saddam Hussein's Republican Guard, among other places. Their next report to the UN is due in 1 week. Searching the waters, crews may have found the wreckage of a small plane that went down last night in Washington's San Juan Islands. 3 people were rescued following that crash, but a 9-year-old girl is still missing. If this year's Golden Globes proves anything, is that the Hollywood musical isn't dead. The movie Chicago scooped up 3 awards, more than any other film. CNN's Eric Hong has the rundown of top winners from L.A.
Well, you know, Kira, the minute the Golden Globes are handed out, it seems the pontificating begins for the Academy Awards. And at least at this point, it appears that 2 films, The Hours and Chicago, will be duking it out for Oscar.
Chicago danced away with a leading 3 Golden Globes, including Best Comedy or Musical. Chicago's Renee Zellweger and Richard Gere had reason to sing, winning top acting honors in the comedy musical category.
I'm literally totally shocked. I don't win anything.
Taking home the award for Best Drama, The Hours, the film which looks at the lives of 3 women living in different eras, also earned Nicole Kidman the Best Dramatic Actress prize. Best Actor in a Drama went to Jack Nicholson, his 6th career Golden Globe, for his role as a depressed widower in About Schmidt.
I don't know whether to be happy or ashamed because I thought we made a comedy.
Other winners included Gangs of New York's Martin Scorsese for Best Director, his first ever Golden Globe, and Adaptation's Chris Cooper and Meryl Streep for Best Supporting Actor and Actress. On the television side, The Shield won Best Drama, and star Michael Chiklis grabbed the Best Dramatic Actor prize. Best Comedy went to Curb Your Enthusiasm.
This is a sad day for the Golden Globes.
Monk's Tony Shalhoub won Best Comedic Actor, Friends' Jennifer Aniston took home the award for Best Comedic Actress, and The Sopranos' Edie Falco was honored with Best Dramatic Actress, but had to whisper her acceptance speech.
I can't talk. I swear to God, this is so funny.
Overall, not a very good night for the broadcast networks. They were virtually shut out, with the exception of NBC, which took home just 1 award. In Beverly Hills, I'm Eric Hong. Kira, back to you.
Thank you, Eric. For a complete read on the Golden Globes, head to our website. The address is cnn.com/entertainment, AOL keyword CNN. The Super Bowl matchup is set, and for the first time in 19 years, the Oakland Raiders will be there. The Raiders rode the throwing arm of the NFL's most valuable player, Rich Gannon, and whipped the Titans 41-24 in the AFC Championship. Oakland will face the Tampa Bay Bucs. It used to be big plays and a tough defense to advance to their first ever Super Bowl. The game pits the Bucs' current coach, John Gruden, with his former team, the Raiders. But for the Eagles, yesterday's playoff was more than an end to their season. It was the end for their home. Josie Karp has more.
Veterans Stadium is a lot like the Philadelphia fans who have filled it for the last 32 years. Gritty, unforgiving, and at times downright dirty. Affectionately known as the Dump, it has played host to some of the most infamous sports moments in recent memory. Expecting the worst from a crowd poised to celebrate the city's first World Series title, mounted police took the field in 1980. The only problem? The game wasn't over. After a 1989 Eagles win over the hated Cowboys, fans pelted Dallas coach Jimmy Johnson and his players with ice balls as they left the field. A few years later, the weapons of choice were D batteries aimed at rookie J.D. Drew, who had dared to turn down an offer to play for the Phillies. Philadelphians have booed Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, so it was no surprise when Eagles fans cheered as Cowboys receiver Michael Irvin lay motionless on the field with a neck injury during a game in 1999. One fan later said, quote, "My only regret is that the stretcher wasn't a coffin." And it's not just the fans. The building itself convulsed during the 1998 Army-Navy football game as a railing gave way, dropping several fans 15 feet onto the field. 9 people were injured. As for the playing field, the patchwork AstroTurf has claimed more than a few knees. And in 2001, an NFL game was postponed for the first time in league history because the field was deemed unplayable. But there is some good that has come out of the vet. 2 Eagles fans who met in the parking lot of the stadium while tailgating were later married. The groom says he heard a woman screaming her hatred for the Cowboys and just had to meet her. For CNN Sports, I'm Josie Carp.
Still to come this hour, Remembering the Dream. Our Brian Cabell live from Ebenezer Baptist Church right here in Atlanta.
Atlantans today are celebrating the life of one of their own, Dr. Martin Luther King. Many of them are also protesting against a possible war in Iraq. That's coming up next.
CNN's coverage of the 2003 Super Bowl is brought to you by HP. HP technology, services, and people help make more things more possible.
Using HP mobile technology to get information quickly and easily, the world's police forces now fight crime digitally.
While other mortgage companies are still filling out the paperwork, Ditech.com is busy processing your loan. Apply now for a low fixed-rate mortgage or cash out some of your equity. It's a whole new way to get a mortgage. Just log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED. Ditech.com, your mortgage solution delivered.
Ricola with natural Swiss herbs. Tastes great, even if you don't have a cough.
Susan McDougal tells all. CNN Tonight in the Crossfire. She refused to testify against Bill Clinton. Now she's ready to reveal the truth. Susan McDougal takes on Carville and Carlson in the Crossfire. CNN Tonight, 7 Eastern. Tonight on CNN Primetime at 8, she's charged with running her husband down inside the Clara Harris trial. At 9, new questions surrounding the disappearance of Laci Peterson. And at 10, the I Have a Dream speech in its entirety.
President Bush and his wife observed Martin Luther King Day with prayer. Mr. Bush told members of an African-American church in Maryland that progress has been made toward racial equality, but there is still work to do. CNN's Brian Cabell is at the church where King preached in Atlanta. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Kira. Martin Luther King was born here in Atlanta. He was raised here. He raised his own children here. He pastored here, and he's now buried about 100 yards from where I'm standing. Today, Atlantans celebrated and are still celebrating his life that ended some 35 years ago. They are marching for Martin Luther King, what he represented, thousands of them, among them political groups, social groups, youth groups, music groups. But a number of them, I would say literally hundreds, were marching against a possible war on Iraq today. We saw many, many signs in the crowd. We still see many, many signs. And from the pulpit, we heard from many speakers saying that if Martin Luther King were alive today, he too would be protesting against the war in Iraq.
Martin said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice." And once again, Martin made his words credible with action as he protested against the war in Vietnam. May his challenge and his example guide and inspire us to seek peaceful alternatives to the war with Iraq and military conflict in the Middle East and all over the world.
The service at Ebenezer Baptist Church, where King once pastored, was a joyous remembrance of his life. The famous were there, the not so famous were there. There were a couple hundred. The overflow crowd was across the street. There were Democrats here, there were Republicans here. Bill Frist, the new Senate Majority Leader, was here as well. All of them came today to the hometown of Martin Luther King 35 years after his death, again, to remember what he did so many years ago. Kira.
Brian, you know, we're taking a glimpse inside the church here. We see it behind you. Talk a little bit about the tour that takes place there. I think one of the things that I think is so fascinating is you can go and sit in this church. It's remained unscathed from the era, and you can actually listen to King's sermons as you sit in the pews.
Yeah, it's been renovated. It was kind of falling apart a little bit a few years ago, but it has been renovated. It's been turned into a museum. That's now just, it holds special services. It's no longer the home church for the congregation here. The home church is actually across the street, a much larger church. But yeah, you go inside there and you see virtually exactly where Martin Luther King and his father preached many, many years ago. It is taking a step back into history, and that's what they did today again.
That's a pretty awesome sight. Our Brian Cabell right there in the neighborhood where Martin Luther King lived and preached. Thanks, Brian. One of the products of the civil rights era, desegregation of schools. In some communities, however, those gains are being lost. CNN's Whitney Casey reports.
One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
A dream that wasn't realized by Patricia Dew, but instead, in some respects, years later, by her 3 daughters.
We never went to segregated schools. In fact, we lived in a mostly white neighborhood, so I was bused with the white children into a black neighborhood when I was in the 5th grade, because that was how integration was achieved.
An achievement and a dream that, according to a recent Harvard study, has begun to unravel. The integration of black students like the Dews increased continuously from the 1950s to the late 1980s. But now the study shows the trend has reversed. Segregation is on the rise, and a new group of minorities are at the center of what the author dubs re-segregation.
For Latino students, who are our biggest minority group now and very rapidly growing, they're the most segregated by race and poverty and increasingly by language, and they're having the greatest educational problems.
Problems New York City educator Martha Olson sees mounting every day. 2 years ago, Ms. Olson left her job as a successful attorney to teach social studies at a high school in the South Bronx. Her students are roughly 60% Latino, 36% black, and less than 2% white. She celebrates this racial diversity. What do they learn from each other in that kind of diverse climate?
Well, it's fun. You go to a school dance and the music flips between merengue and rap. And just like that, you know, and the kids are all out on the dance floor and it goes back and forth. And you see, you know, there's a wonderful blending of cultures there.
But Ms. Olson also points out that although racially diverse, 85% of her students are poor enough to be eligible for free lunch.
They don't have role models, you know, and none of them really have that many role models from their community because they're all from the same lower socioeconomic class.
So they don't see what is possible.
Exactly.
Ms. Olson's school, according to the Harvard study, is considered a minority school, meaning minorities are in the majority. A type of resegregated school, the study says, is on the increase. Currently across the U.S., 1 in 6 black children attend a minority school. For Latinos, it's 1 in 9. But for whites, it's less than 1 in 1,000. As we remember Martin Luther King's birthday, the question remains, is the dream of desegregation still alive?
My impression is that most parents are a lot more interested in whether their kids are learning than in the color of the skin of the kid at the next desk.
The do's say the child at the next desk does matter. It's sometimes the only glimpse of the possibilities that could lie ahead. Whitney Casey, CNN, New York.
One day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Business. What we care about is what a company is made of. That's our business. That's why companies that list on the New York Stock Exchange must have the integrity to meet the highest standards in the world, and why the world puts its stock in us.
On CNN tonight.
A shocking crime. A woman charged with running her husband down. The trial of Clara Harris.
CNN tonight, 8 Eastern.
So you're off for a couple of days of R&R. Well, when the cat's away, the mouse, spouse, will play. In just 2 days, our design team covertly conquers inferior interiors. And depending on how well your loved one knows you, could gain you gifts galore. Don't miss the fun, prizes, and surprises on While You Were Out. Saturdays at 10 and weekdays at 5, only on TLC.
To set up a consultation for your kitchen design and remodeling work, call Absolute Kitchens or visit their website.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I'm an American.
I am an American.
I'm an American.
I am an American.
I am an American. I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American. I am an American. I am an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I'm an American.
I am an American.
I am
An American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
I am American.
I am America.
I'm an American.
I'm an American.
I'm an American.
I am an American.
I'm an American.
I am an American.
I am an American.
Geico's always been about savings, but he really brought customer service to a whole new level.
We settle a ton of claims in under 48 hours.
Guaranteed claim repairs? That was his idea.
Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high.
You know what he represents? A commitment to excellence.
And he deserves this award.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is CNN. This is CNN.
In the waters of Indonesia, pirates, yes, pirates, are wreaking havoc on shipping and commerce. But some companies think they have the answer to this ancient problem. CNN's Andrew Brown has more.
The fare lane looks like many of the vessels at anchor in Hong Kong, except for the wires that run round the perimeter of the ship, part of a 9,000-volt electric fence designed to protect the crew and the cargo. Ocean-going vessels face a variety of threats. One of the biggest concerns is piracy. The Dutch company that makes this fence says both the crew and the ship owner are vulnerable if pirates attack.
More serious people are the ones that try to hostage take. I mean, you can imagine that if a crew is taken hostage, the owner is certainly going to pay a lot of ransom to get them free.
Often, security experts say the crew won't know pirates are entering the ship until it's too late. There are many different ways someone could try to climb on board without being noticed. This section in front of the bow is completely concealed from the rest of the ship. Intruders have even tried to shimmy up the anchor chain. But if they touch one of these wires, they receive a powerful electric shock. Officially, the current's non-lethal. That doesn't mean you'd want to get too close.
9,000 volts gives a very serious jolt.
And the fence is also linked to an alarm system.
It is virtually impossible to enter a ship undetected.
But some security experts question whether ship owners really have the compassion or a big enough economic incentive to install a fence like this.
Traditionally, they're happy to write off the losses with insurance. The crews are often from developing countries. As terrible as it seems, often they don't really care that much about the crews.
Pressure on ship owners is mounting. In the first 9 months of 2002, there were more than 270 pirate attacks on vessels worldwide, up around 10% on the same period the year before, and many of the culprits have vanished without trace. There's never been a better time for ship owners to prepare their vessels for whatever lies over the horizon. Andrew Brown, CNN, Hong Kong.
Pictures coming in to CNN, courtesy our affiliate WABC. We're going to take you out to New York where there's a ship fire, we are told. This is in Queens, out in the harbor area. Once again, a ship fire. We don't know exactly how this was caused or what type of ship this is, who is on board. We're just getting word and just getting pictures. We'll continue to follow this and let you know as we find out what's taking place here in Queens, New York. Now a line about Hirschfeld. Al Hirschfeld, that is, the New York artist whose pen and ink caricatures made him as big a star as most of his subjects. The Lion King, as noted documentary once called him, died today in his sleep at the age of 99. His death was as graceful as his art.
Name a major musical or play of the past 70 years, and Al Hirschfeld has drawn it and its stars. Guys and Dolls, West Side Story, Peter Pan, Rent. Hirschfeld in Broadway, synonymous since the 1930s, a performance mostly on the pages of the New York Times.
We just shook hands some 70 years ago, and only 2 years ago they wanted a contract, and I said, "You must be kidding."
In magazines and books, Hirschfeld chronicled the changing city. Sidewalk cafeterias where people met for lunch. Nightclubs where bartenders stayed in business during Prohibition. Couples strolling the streets of Harlem. World War II soldiers at a dance. His breakthrough happened by accident. When Hirschfeld sketched a well-known French actor on a program, a friend got it published in a newspaper, and Hirschfeld drawing theater was on his way. Playwrights became friends, from Eugene O'Neill to Arthur Miller. Composers like the Gershwins, his subjects.
Years ago, there'd be maybe 3 or 4 openings in one night. Now it's lucky if we get 2 openings a month. I rarely agreed with the critics.
But he didn't tell them what to write, and they didn't tell him what to draw.
I think his daughter was born in 1945, and shortly after her birth, as kind of a joke, really, he put her into one of his drawings.
Nina became a signature, Hirschfeld hiding her name in the lines of his drawings, cluing in readers how many times the name was there.
I did it just to herald her appearance on this planet, and I had no ulterior motive in doing it. I didn't think anybody would notice it. And after a couple of weeks, I thought the joke wore thin, and I left it out. And I started getting calls and telegrams from across from Alaska.
New York has been providing inspiration from the subways to the hot dog stands to the World's Fair. The city's cultural icons, his focus, stars of film, of television and the stage, whether that's Carnegie Hall or Broadway.
The hardest thing isn't the execution for you, but it's making up your mind what personality trait you want to depict.
Yeah, a lot of them are like blots, you know, they don't register.
When we visited Hirschfeld, he was working in the same barber chair he's used since 1954. He was drawing the 4 women who star in the HBO sitcom Sex and the City.
A lot of editors want a little color out of it, and in recent years, it's changing. It always changes. You have to roll with the punches, you know. I think longevity has to do with the genes, but I do think it doesn't hurt to be. I know that I would be bored if I didn't have anything that I was really interested in. I work 7 days a week, and I love it.
Morning, Joe. New haircut?
No. New shoes? No.
Hey, Joe. You been working out?
No.
Hey, Joe. Shave your mustache?
Nope.
You sure that's not a new haircut?
Yes.
Did you just get back from vacation?
No.
Did you get a promotion?
No.
Did I?
No.
No.
What's different? He finally asked his doctor about Viagra. Ready to ask your doctor about Viagra for the first time? Find out if a free sample is right for you. To learn more, visit Viagra.com. Ask your doctor and see the difference.
It's hard enough rushing through a stressful world during your waking hours. So why add to that stress in bed, tossing and turning on an uncomfortable metal spring mattress? You deserve a good night's sleep. And that's just what you'll get with the Tempur-Pedic Swedish Sleep System, the only mattress that uses the gravity-defying Tempur material originally developed by NASA. Instead of uncomfortable metal springs, the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses billions of viscoelastic memory cells. This soft yet supportive material automatically adjusts to every curve of your body, providing a weightless-like sleep surface that you have to feel to believe.
It feels like it's actually forming its own glove to me.
I can't really find an uncomfortable position.
It's like nothing I've ever felt before in a mattress.
Now you can feel it for yourself. Call and we'll rush you a free sample of the revolutionary Tempur material, along with this video and information kit. You'll learn how metal springs create pressure points that cause you to toss and turn. Tempur-Pedic reduces pressure points so you can get a better night's sleep.
The Tempur-Pedic mattress is unique in that it is firm, but yet it molds to your body, thus relieving those pressure points and allowing you to get a much better night's sleep.
First night was amazing. The second night, I woke up the next morning, no back pain. And I've always had back pain. I was sold after 2 nights.
And because Tempur-Pedic doesn't transfer motion, you'll never disturb your partner. Look how this glass of red wine doesn't tip over, even when she jumps up and down. Try that with a metal spring mattress. Don't be fooled by imitators. Only the Tempur-Pedic mattress uses the revolutionary Tempur material originally developed by NASA. Tempur-Pedic, changing the way the world sleeps.
Call 1-800-215-3500 for your free video, information kit, and free sample of the revolutionary Tempur material. Call now.
Once again, live pictures coming to you from our CNN affiliate WABC in New York. We are told a ship fire has broken out. We don't know what type of ship this is. We don't know who's on board. We don't know anything specific right now. We just know we're getting this tape in. We're trying to unravel the story, find out more information for you. We're told this is near New York Harbor in Queens, a fire aboard a ship out there in the waters of New York. We'll bring you as much information as we can as soon as we get it. Let's talk about man's best friend. There are some four-legged soldiers on the front lines of security in Israel. CNN's Anderson Cooper looks at a program here in the U.S. to train bomb-sniffing dogs for use thousands of miles away.
Go right to it. Check. Show me right where it is.
His name is Nitro, a Labrador mix in training to become a soldier in the war on terror. Actually, it's his nose that's in training. Nitro is learning to sniff out explosives. At this facility in Southern California, Nitro and dozens of other dogs are taking part in a new nonprofit program called Pups for Peace.
Good, he's on it. Good, he's on it. Good.
Pups for Peace is the brainchild of an LA economist
who wanted to do something to prevent suicide bombings in Israel and prevent another 9/11 from happening here. His name is Glenn Yago.
One of my sons lives in New York City, and he noted the fact how many dogs that there were, both in search and rescue and in explosive detection in the wake of September 11th. After talking with people in security situations, there was a great desire. People embraced the idea very quickly.
In a pilot program, many of the dogs that graduate Pups for Peace are donated to Israel, where they patrol malls and bus stations, civilian targets of suicide bombers.
A lot of what you see out here isn't incidental. You see, like, the file cabinets, the bus, the trailer, luggage, rubble heaps. These are all training scenarios for the dog, the sort of scenarios the dogs will encounter in real life.
Co-founder of Pups for Peace, Mike Hirschfeld, has trained dogs for the LA Police Department and the U.S. military. He and his team look for energetic dogs who love to hunt and fetch. After learning to sniff out explosives, the dogs are trained to sit and stare at the location. Their reward? Playtime.
Right around the time of the Oklahoma City bombing, it occurred to me that we would be needing explosive detection dogs. There was a shortage of these dogs, and that these dogs were an effective tool.
Effective tool Israeli security officials welcome.
This is a tremendous boost to the protection of our people. Every suicide bomber will now understand that if he sees a dog in the vicinity, he got to follow him.
For Nitro and the other dogs, locating explosives is just a game. For the rest of us, an important weapon in the war on terror. Anderson Cooper, CNN.
That does it for this edition of Live From. Talkback Live is up in just 1 minute, but first a quick news alert. Putting the squeeze on Iraq, Colin Powell exhorts the UN Security Council to enforce its demand that Iraq disarm. Iraq made some concessions today to UN weapons inspectors, but Powell says the inspections cannot go on forever. The 2 American pilots in the friendly fire hearing, a ground controller testifies that he was unaware of the firing range that one of the pilots ended up bombing by mistake. 4 Canadian soldiers were killed at the range in Afghanistan, and the Air Force is deciding whether to court-martial the pilots. Rescue teams find a family of 4 that was missing near Mount St. Helens. Even the 1-year-old appears to be in good shape, but all 4 of them are being examined. The family went missing on Saturday after venturing into the mountains, apparently looking for snow. They were found this morning, shortly after their car was discovered. That's a quick look at the headlines. Talkback Live with Arthel Neville is next. We'll see you tomorrow.
Today on Talkback Live, peace could get a chance if Saddam Hussein goes into exile. But how likely is that? And even if Saddam wanted to go, who would take him? Also, the husband of Laci Peterson expands the search for his missing wife while brushing off reports of an alleged affair and reports about a lucrative insurance policy. We'll have a live report on the investigation. Then Secretary of State Colin Powell breaks rank with President Bush over affirmative action at the University of Michigan. And columnist Roland Martin asks, what would Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. do? The talk begins right now. Neville. Over the weekend, thousands of people turned out for peace demonstrations in several cities, most in Washington and San Francisco. At the same time, tens of thousands of troops make their way toward the Persian Gulf, preparing for possible combat. And as it turns out, some members of the administration are entertaining at least one alternative to war. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld says possible exile could be the answer for Saddam Hussein, and Secretary of State Colin Powell agrees.
I think the Iraqi people would be a lot better off, and this whole situation would be resolved if Saddam Hussein and all of those around him who think like him, his sons and the top leadership of the regime, would leave so that others could step forward who would understand the importance of disarming and how a better future awaits the Iraqi people.
Okay, well, how's that for an idea? Let's talk about it now with Shibli Telhami, a professor at the University of Maryland and author of the Stakes, America and the Middle East. I want to welcome you to the show, first of all.
My pleasure.
Okay, give me, or given the history of Saddam, would he choose exile or go down fighting?
Well, you know, nothing is impossible, of course, but there are 3 reasons why it's not very probable that he would accept. One reason, and when you look at leaders who did go into exile, like Baby Doc in Haiti and Idi Amin in Uganda and the Shah of Iran in the late 70s, all of these people left in the middle of hostilities when it became clear they're going down, and usually because of internal opposition and fighting. In this case, we're saying to him, leave before we even commence attacks, and that's, you know, we don't have much precedent for that. It's highly improbable. Second, there's no way he can guarantee that he's going to be safe afterwards. Frankly, I don't think this administration or any American government could ever give a guarantee that he's not going to be prosecuted. Certainly human rights organization and others would demand it. So he can't have any certainty that he's going to be safe even if he leaves. And third, I think from the history of this man, as far as we can tell, he is not the type who's likely to just give up that easily. In any case, he has a sense of himself, a grand sense of self, that makes it improbable that he would just simply fade by going into exile.
Right. No, well, still, let's look at hypotheticals. If Saddam would choose exile, who would take him?
Well, that's part of the problem. I think in the past there are other countries that have taken him. I don't think any country would be willing to take him unless the international community wanted them to take him, because they don't want to be a target afterwards. For example, if the Saudis were to take him and the U.S. opposes that, then we would blame them for hosting him. In the past, they've hosted leaders, but usually after we have acquiesced in their hosting him. The Egyptians hosted the Shah of Iran after we also asked them to do that. So clearly, if we really want a country to host him and we would assure them that there would not be a target or associated with it, and they were seen to be doing us a favor, it is not impossible. There are a lot of countries in the Middle East, particularly the Arab states, who are so opposed to the war, who are so frightened and terrified by the consequences of the war, that they will go the extra mile if they truly believed that war will be preempted by taking certain action. In that sense, if there was a persuasive argument that this will resolve the issue peacefully, you might find actually some takers.
Now, National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice says she doesn't think that Saddam will go without force. Do you agree with that?
I think most likely, and I think, frankly, if you look at the administration's statements in the past couple of days of saying, we support the exile argument, they're scoring high points while knowing at the very same time that it's not likely. They're scoring in the following way. First, they were saying essentially that we could avoid war. We're not rushing to war. War is not our option. It's not just, we're not interested in occupation. We're interested in changing the situation on the ground. They score politically in that way. Second, by getting other countries to talk about it, they're implicitly accepting the notion that there should be a regime change. Up until now, it's been about disarmament. So in that sense, they score again. And third, if they have a talk about exile and so forth, then in a way you're persuading the second-tier officials in Iraq, the military and so forth, that maybe he's really considering it, and therefore they would increase the chance of defection. So that helps the U.S. as well. So in all these ways, the U.S. has an interest in this particular kind of position that it's taken, even if the chance of the exile option is not very high.
Then I want to go to Barbara Starr right now, but when I come back, I want to ask you if you think this is merely political posturing, though, on the United States part. But hold on. Hang on, sir. Think about that for me. I'll get your answer in a moment, because right now I want to talk to CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. And Barbara, you've been hearing what we're talking about. We're hearing the word exile from various administration officials. And is the White House actively pursuing exile for Saddam Hussein?
Well, by all indications at the moment, they are letting that little process reside in the Arab world. There are very strong indications that the Saudis, the Turks, the Egyptians are all trying to send a message to Saddam Hussein that it's time for him to go. Now, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld has been underscoring this publicly. He has talked about the fact that the preferred option, in his words, would be for Saddam to just pack up and leave. And of course, this weekend, he talked about that a bit on television, on the weekend talk shows, saying that there might be an option to avoid war by having the Iraqi leadership go into some sort of exile. It wasn't exactly clear whether that would include Saddam Hussein or not. Now, Saddam Hussein, of course, is watching all of this. No indication that he does plan to pack up and leave. But if he was thinking about it, U.S. officials say he would probably want some sort of guarantees. What he doesn't want is to be in the same position as Slobodan Milosevic, of course, from Serbia, who's now standing trial for war crimes in The Hague. Saddam's going to want ironclad guarantees that he will be free of prosecution, and Don Rumsfeld said that decision would be up to the White House and the Justice Department. Arthel?
Okay, Barbara Starr, thank you so much for that report, and I'm going to go back to Mr. Tahami right now. You just heard Barbara Starr's report. That is a good question. You know, can the U.S. or the UN Security Council members guarantee that Saddam will not be tried for war crimes?
Well, I doubt that. I think that political pressure here would be so hard, so difficult for any administration to take an ironclad assurance, and I'm not even sure what an ironclad assurance would look like. Actually, you know, there is talk that the administration has already drawn a list of up to 40 high-level Iraqi officials that are said to be beyond any kind of amnesty. So I'm not sure about that. But the real issue, I think, the question that you asked before, which is really interesting, is this an option that the administration is truly pursuing? I rather doubt it, personally. I doubt it for a number of reasons. One is that obviously it's, as I suggested earlier, it's not particularly realistic. I think there's always a chance, but not realistic. But the other is that I am not sure that they would be comfortable, given the position that they have taken, with another group of people from the same elites that now rule in Iraq replacing the Iraqi regime. Frankly, in this case, if he goes into exile, who's going to fill the vacuum? Obviously, it's going to come from the military and the Ba'ath Party. The administration has already lumped them together in a way as a regime.
So then would it be more of the same?
That's the question, and therefore, would that itself completely avoid the war, particularly if you have leaders who have been associated with the regime in one shape or another? You know, unless there is a coup. A coup option is different because that's not a peaceful transition, but rather where you have people taking him on and they're opponents of the regime.
And how likely is that to happen?
Well, that clearly, I think, is the preference of many people in the Arab world who have, for a long time, hoped that it would happen internally so that there wouldn't have to be an international intervention. But he's been very, very good at keeping others at bay. It has been a ruthless regime that has been very effective. And frankly, there's another reason. I mean, there are people in the elites in Baghdad around him who rally behind him because they are fearful of the alternative in this environment. So it hasn't, obviously there have been attempts. We know there have been attempts, but they haven't succeeded. And certainly there is a hope, at least in the U.S., among the U.S. military, that as the war seems inevitable, as it looks clear that Iraq will be defeated militarily and the regime will fall, there will be more attempts prior to that so as to spare the Iraqi military more casualties. That's certainly the hope here. I think it is also the hope in many parts of the Arab world.
Let me get some audience members in here. Jean from Georgia, do you think Saddam would accept or choose exile?
I certainly don't think he would choose exile. He's been in power a long time, and I don't think he wants to have a foreign government, particularly the United States, force him out of power.
What do you think, Jim?
I think Saddam Hussein has a big ego, and I think the creative powers of the federal government need to find something to appeal to his ego. Maybe we could give him the Atlanta Falcons or something like that to help him feed his ego.
All right, Joe in Ohio, what do you think? Do you think Saddam would choose or accept exile?
I think it's foolish to think that he would ever go peacefully. He's been involved in scandals and assassination attempts since he was in his mid-20s trying to get into the politics he's in now. I don't think he'll ever go and give up what he's earned peacefully.
Okay, Joe, thanks so much for calling. Mr. Shibli Telhami, want to thank you as well for joining us here today on Talkback Live. I'm out of time right now. And in the meantime, do you think Saddam Hussein would make a welcome guest? Which country would take him? Give us a call right now or email me your ideas. We'll make time for the question of the day later this hour. And up next, the search for Laci Peterson. We'll have a live update and talk about the investigation. So don't go anywhere. The talk continues after this break.
Refinancing your mortgage is fast and easy with Ditech.com.
At Ditech, we refinanced our home at a lower interest rate, and we also took out an equity line of credit to have available for future use, and we were very, very happy.
If you're thinking about refinancing your mortgage, call or log on to Ditech.com for today's low fixed rate.
I would highly recommend Ditech to others because the process was so quick and easy, and the people were great.
Ditech.com. Call 1-800-71-FIXED.
My new baby's name is Max. He's waking up about now. My business partner's name is Joe.
This has everything you're looking for. It has
I see him more than I see Max. It's also my birthday. And I wouldn't mind working from home today.
Gateway PCs feature Intel Pentium 4 processors.
Today on Talkback Live, as the nation celebrates Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday, we ask, what would Dr. King say about the president's stand on affirmative action at the University of Michigan? It's all ahead as the talk continues after this break.
This is the greatest pianist in Poland, maybe the whole world.
America's top critics agree The Pianist is one of the best pictures of the year.
I want to help. I want to do something. We're going to fight.
It's a stunning epic that keeps you holding your breath. The Los Angeles Times raves The Pianist achieves greatness. And now it is the winner of 4 National Society of Film Critics Awards, including Best Actor Adrian Brody and Best Picture of the Year. The Pianist, rated R, now playing in select theaters.
What the world needs now. I wanted a romantic getaway. He wanted it action-packed. I said someplace exotic. He said close. He wanted to dive. I wanted to dip. He wanted to play outside, and I wanted to stay inside. So we chose Sandals, the world's best all-inclusives, where love conquers all at the resorts that include it all.
Book now. Save 35%. Call your travel agent or 1-800-SANDALS.
A CNN exclusive. Shocking evidence of U.S. and European companies selling chemicals to Iraq. And CNN's Richard Roth was the first newsman to get the story. For the best in real reporting, stay with CNN.
And welcome back. There is still no sign of Laci Peterson, the pregnant woman missing in Modesto, California, since Christmas Eve. Her husband, Scott, has been getting a lot of attention since published reports linked him with another woman and revealed a $250,000 insurance policy he reportedly took out on his wife. CNN's Paul Verkaman is covering this case in Modesto. Paul?
Well, Arthel, the story takes another strange twist this morning because Scott Peterson was seen outside his Modesto home changing a broken lock, and police have just confirmed to us that there indeed was a burglary at the Peterson home. They characterized it as a bizarre burglary. They say nothing significant was stolen, and they remind everybody that this does not mark some significant breakthrough in the case. As for Scott Peterson and what you talked about earlier, here's what's going on. Several of Laci's close friends say that Modesto police told them that they went to Laci's parents and showed recent pictures of a woman that they called Scott's girlfriend. Scott Peterson's close friends and family say no way, that this is all a bunch of lies, and that there is no way that Scott Peterson had some sort of adulterous affair.
I have no knowledge of that. I haven't seen the pictures. I just, you know, our family and the Rocha family continues to believe that Scott in no way had anything to do with Laci's disappearance.
And now back here live Detectives in Modesto fanned out around the area and in the surrounding counties, and they scoured the land. They also looked in bodies of water, but turned up nothing in their search to find Laci Peterson missing since Christmas Eve. Arthel?
Okay, Paul Verkemen, thank you very much for filling us in on the details. And right now I'd like to talk more about the investigation with a man with over 20 years of law enforcement experience. CNN's Mike Brook. Hello, Mike. Always good to see you here on Talkback.
Good to be here, Arthel.
Okay, first of all, Mike, in a case like this, missing persons cases, where do police look and what do they look for?
Missing persons cases are very, very difficult to work. First of all, you got to figure out, did this person who's missing, in this case Laci Peterson, did she leave on her own account? Does she not want to be found? Or is she a victim of foul play? Law enforcement in Modesto right now believe that she is a victim of foul play. So one of the things you look at, is it someone who, is she the victim of a random act of violence? Or is it someone she knows well, or someone maybe she just came in contact with that became possessed, very obsessive, and went after her? Or is it suicide? I think law enforcement's kind of ruling out suicide because apparently she was fairly stable. They say she was very stable. She was 10 months pregnant. And so I think suicide, we can rule it out. But law enforcement looks like they are focusing on Scott, and there's a lot of questions to be answered about Scott Peterson.
And you know, the tabloids have gotten into this story. Do police deal with the tabloids as a source or a nuisance?
Well, sometimes the tabloids can get information that law enforcement can't get for some reason. Now, this picture that we're hearing about. Well, we're hearing about this picture of Scott with this woman that he was supposed to be having an affair with. Where is the picture? Law enforcement apparently, and they're saying law enforcement has not come out and said anything at all. They're being very mum about the case, which is bad for the media, good for the investigation. No leaks out about anything, any possible things. But this picture of him with someone at some kind of social event, you know, where is that? Where did it come from? There's a lot of questions to be asked.
And you know what, Mike? I mean, obviously, I don't know. I'm not the investigator at all here, but I'm just thinking right now that because tabloids do pay for sources, I mean, you know, some nutty person out there could say, hey, look at this picture. I've got more. I have something on this case. You need to pay me money for this.
That could very well be true. You know, this picture, is it someone that he was involved with or someone he just had his picture taken with? That's some questions to be asked. But there's a lot of other questions. One of the questions, if I was an investigator, Laci Peterson went missing after her husband left that morning to go 85 miles to go fishing.
And it's Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. Now, has he ever done this before? Does he go fishing by himself all the time? And does he drive 85 miles? So they're going to try to retrace exactly where he went. You know, if you drive 85 miles, most people here, you drive 85 miles, you're going to stop for gas, you're going to stop to go to the bathroom, you're going to stop to get a cup of coffee early in the morning. You know, are there some things that they could find out about that? They're retracing all their steps. Now, they went down where he was fishing, and they did use sonar to try to find any anomalies, and they thought they had something, but it wound up being an anchor.
Right. Mike, I have to take a break, but I have more questions for you, and would you take some audience questions when we come back?
Absolutely.
Okay, and viewer questions. Great. Listen, we're going to continue this story after this break, so the talk continues in a moment, so please stay right where you are.
Here's an idea. How about integrity?
Tell the truth. That's easy. Just give it to me straight.
All we're asking for is a little honesty. You know what we deserve? Accountability.
These days, I need integrity.
I'm an investor.
I'm an investor.
So as an investor,
I have to be able to trust you.
At the New York Stock Exchange, we agree. So do 2,800 of the world's best companies that meet the highest standards. So every shareholder can invest with trust and confidence.
I think I deserve that.
With rugged all-wheel drive and better handling than ever, the new Subaru Outback gets you closer to nature without getting in the way of nature. When you get it, you get it.
See your local Subaru dealer for information on financing as low as 0.9% APR.
tonight, disturbing developments in the case of missing pregnant woman Laci Peterson. Was there another woman? Only on Larry King Live, CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Big Mac is $35 and we're celebrating. Right now, buy 1 Big Mac and get a second Big Mac for just a penny.
Go, Big Mac. It's your birthday.
It's a big McDonald's party and everybody's into it.
2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Buy 1 Big Mac, get a second for just a penny. Come on, party with the Big Mac.
Whoa!
We're leaving in 5 minutes, guys.
The C240 sedan, now with 4MATIC all-wheel drive. Disappointing kids everywhere.
This is CNN.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Arthel Neville. We're talking about the search for Laci Peterson, the pregnant Modesto, California woman who has been missing since Christmas Eve. We're talking with CNN's Mike Brook. He has more than 20 years of law enforcement experience. And Mike, in these cases, how does the husband prove that he's not guilty?
Well, it's very difficult. Law enforcement probably right now, they are following him. They're watching everything he does. They've interviewed him already. They're going to re-interview him again, most likely. And there's a possibility he may trip up. Now, some people are saying, well, why hadn't he taken a polygraph test? Initially, he said that he would volunteer to take a polygraph. If I were Scott Peterson, I wouldn't take a polygraph. And he's probably been advised by attorneys not to take a polygraph.
Is that because they're not 100% accurate?
They're not accurate, and also they're not admissible. So what does he gain by taking a polygraph? Absolutely nothing. I've spoken to polygraph examiners before who give the polygraph test, and I asked them, would you take a polygraph? And these are some of the best in the country. And they said, no, I wouldn't take a polygraph, because you can be totally honest and still, for some reason,
you could be stressed out about taking
there's a lot of different factors, a lot of variables. And keep in mind, it's only an investigative tool, and it's not admissible in court. So why take a polygraph test?
But how do law enforcement agencies view that when someone says, you know what, I'm not going to take the polygraph? Is that a red flag?
Oh, sure. As an investigator, many times I would ask someone, would you be willing to take a polygraph? And they say no. So automatically you think, well, if you're not going to take one, you have something to hide.
Okay, but what if I said, okay, Mike, I'm willing to take it, but I'm really concerned because of the variables such as stress or things like that. Would you then look at me as a serious suspect, or realize that I'm sincere about that?
I'd say you're probably sincere about that. And the initial questions, when they develop a baseline, there are baseline questions the polygraph examiners ask. What is your name? Where do you live? When were you born? Those kind of things, just to develop a baseline on your honesty.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's tough. A lot of people get stressed out. They use polygraph examinations on all people coming into the FBI. And it does get people stressed out.
Now, I promised the viewers a chance to talk to you, Mike. I've got Fran standing by on the phone now from South Carolina. And as you know as well that once Laci Peterson became pregnant, Scott Peterson took out a $250,000 life insurance policy on his wife. And Fran, your thoughts on that?
Well, some of the media seem to be emphasizing the fact that he bought a $250,000 life insurance policy, but that's a fairly normal thing to do when you're pregnant. 35 years ago, the first time we had life insurance on me was when I got pregnant. So
what about your husband? Did you have that on him as well?
We had insurance on him, but we didn't have any insurance on me. And at the time I got pregnant, we went in and changed our insurance so that there was some life insurance on me. Now, 35 years ago, it wasn't $250,000. We weren't too rich back then. But.
Well, Fran, thank you so much. Let's let Mike Brooks respond to that.
Well, I think that's the big question asked. Was there also a policy taken out on him? I mean, he's probably. It sounds like from the family that he is the main provider for that family. If something happened to him, what would happen to Laci and the newborn? I think there's still a lot of questions to be asked about the $250,000 policy. How much insurance did he have on Laci prior to that?
Okay, Mike, we have time for one more question or comment. Rick, you used to be an officer, correct?
Yes, I was a police officer for 20 years.
Okay, and what are your thoughts, sir?
I'd be recording everything this guy was saying, watching him, just like your guest said. If he's involved sooner or later, he's going to trip himself up, and you have everything that he said documented, and you can just present that back at him and go back at his statements.
Mike, final thoughts?
I think you're absolutely right, and as I said, the early interviews with him, the later interviews with him, again, going back over things, paraphrasing things they've asked him before to see exactly does he have an alibi. To me, that 85-mile drive the same morning that his wife came up missing, to me, is very, very suspect.
Okay, Mike Brooks, thank you so much for joining me here today on Talkback Live. We'll see you again.
Thank you, Arthur.
Of course, and coming up next, what would Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. say about Michigan's affirmative action program and the president's opposition to it? We'll talk to the author of a provocative essay asking that very question. We're back in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
There's a place I dream about where the sun never goes out. Ooh, we can begin again. Share our skin, let the sun shine in. At the edge of the ocean, we can start over again.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. Do you use an inhaler? Do you still have problems breathing? Do you use albuterol or other respiratory medications? If so, Medicare may cover a more effective liquid breathing medication. Call Star Medical at 1-800-229-7214. Call today to see if you qualify at 1-800-229-7214. Call now.
CNN Tonight. Was missing pregnant woman Laci Peterson's husband having an affair? And why did he take out a $250,000 insurance policy on his wife? Seeking answers for troubling questions. Only on Larry King Live. CNN Tonight, 9 Eastern.
And welcome back to Talkback Live, everyone. I'm Arthel Neville. There is plenty of ceremony today marking Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday, especially here in Atlanta, home to the King Center and Ebenezer Baptist Church. Now, Dr. King's widow, Coretta Scott King, told a packed congregation to honor the memory of her husband. And today our guest, Roland Martin, does just that as he asked the question what the civil rights leader would do or think of President Bush's stand on affirmative action at the University of Michigan. Martin is editor of BlackAmericaWeb.com and author of Speak Brother, A Black Man's View of America. He is joins us along with syndicated columnist Armstrong Williams, the host of The Right Side with Armstrong Williams. His article on affirmative action appears this week in Newsweek, and I want to welcome both of you to the show today.
Glad to be here, Arthel.
Okay, good to see both of you.
Hi, Arthel.
Hi, Armstrong. I want to begin with a quote from Roland's op-ed piece in today's USA Today. It says, quote, "Our own president is an affirmative action baby. He didn't get terrific high school grades, but he did have a nice last name and family connections that made his entry into Yale easier." So, Roland, do you think President Bush is a hypocrite?
Well, first of all, he is a hypocrite, along with all of those other folks who criticize preferences. He admitted that he was a C student. He was denied admittance to the University of Texas. And last I checked, Yale has more stringent standards than the University of Texas. So the fact of the matter is he got in because of his father, because of his uncle, because of his grandfather, Prescott Bush. So in this Michigan case, points are awarded in that case on dealing with legacy. So the question is, what, are you against preferences or are you only against racial preferences? That's the question.
Armstrong, so is it okay, or why is it okay for alum kids to get into a university and not affirmative action beneficiaries?
There is a difference here. What he has alleged that President Bush benefited from. I mean, Bill Cosby, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, this is more of a class issue that he speaks of. If you have wealth, if you have the right name, if your family gave money to the institution, then you can get in on this legacy award. That's not really about race, it's more about class. What has happened at the University of Michigan is that not only do you get points for being an athlete, which can be black, white, Asian, Hispanic, you can get points from a legacy award, which can be all those things. But when you introduce that you get 20 points based solely on whether you're black, Native American, Latino, there lies the problem, because absolutely you're being given this based on your race to say as if you cannot achieve.
So then Armstrong, hang on one sec, Roland, hang on, Armstrong, so are you saying that it's okay to be considered or given preferential treatment because of your race? That's wrong, but it's okay to have that same sort of treatment if you come from a certain socioeconomic class?
Actually, I'm glad you raised that point. You know, it is all a bourgeois boondoggle, where the elite, the wealthy, and the middle class continue to benefit. These programs should be based on need, socioeconomic background, income. What happens is that the rich and the middle class just becomes better off, and the poor gets poor, and they don't benefit from these special programs. Affirmative action is not working where it's really necessary for those who are economically deprived. I say get rid of all of them.
Well, so I've let Armstrong finally answer the question. It's interesting, Arthel, he made an issue saying that this has nothing to do with race. Like I said in the USA Today article, if you are white and you have a grandfather, a mother, or a father who attended Yale, you get points. Me, as an African American, my grandfather could not have attended most of these universities when they were of age to go to college. So therefore, if you are a white student today, you are indeed benefiting from a racist past because you are being awarded points that I could not receive by virtue of that same legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. So the question is, I understand the point about class, but the fact of the matter is they are receiving points based upon a system where my ancestors could not have attended these universities.
But still, the point that I make, it is still an issue of class. Affirmative action should be based on socioeconomic deprivation. And also, we should never undermine and never take away from achievement. Are you saying to me that I'm only going to get 12 points on a perfect SAT score? What if I worked hard to get 1,400 or 1,500? Listen,
and Armstrong, what if your last name was Bush and your father's name was Bush and you were a C student in high school and you could not get into the University of Texas, but you got into an Ivy League school? You are an admitted C student in college, but you got into Harvard. So you talk about merit. Did the president have the same merit? And I wonder about the student who wanted to go to Yale who couldn't get in because Bush got in. I wonder if he would switch places with the president today.
Well, you know what? This is not just about President Bush. The issue is, and let me just reiterate, I just wish you could at least embrace this part. I think you and I are saying something similar, but in very different ways. And that is that the needy should really benefit from these programs. If you really want affirmative action to work, by the time a kid is in high school, graduate school, college, it is too late. If you really want it to make a difference, you've got to start with these children in kindergarten where you can really make a difference.
Well, first of all, I agree when it comes to the whole point of education, but what I find is you find individuals such in some states who are basing future prison dollars on the grades of fourth graders in various elementary schools. And so I understand how you must pay attention in primary and secondary levels of education, but the reality is we don't do that. And we also can't afford to say, well, you know what, until we fix what's happening in primary and secondary education, we should do it with affirmative action. I would love to see the day when it's not a matter where we have to use race. But the fact of the matter is we have not reached that point in this country. You have an individual like Colin Powell who strongly endorses affirmative action, and yet I find it interesting that President Bush chose to talk to a small number of people on the Michigan case, yet he never sought out the opinion of Colin Powell. I wonder why.
But Roland, here's another point I'd like to make, Arthel, and it is this. You know what? I really think this issue of affirmative action is so overblown and not even worthy of this kind of attention. And here's why. Less than 1% of black kids in this country benefit from affirmative action. 99.2% of these kids attend colleges and universities somewhere else. 56% of black college graduates graduate from historical black colleges and universities. If you ask most inner city kids about affirmative action, they've never heard of it. So I wonder, why are we spending so much time on an issue? Because it takes away from the real issues about raising family, dealing with the intellectual gap before they go to kindergarten, dealing with the real issues.
Then how do you focus on that a little bit more, Armstrong? What do you do to hang on? I'm sorry, Roland. I just wanted to ask Armstrong, how do you redirect the attention to those issues?
You know, we've got to go back to where and this is just it. Fortunately for me and many people in this country, I had good parents who placed emphasis on education, the kinds of books that we read, limiting the amount of television that we watch, reading newspapers.
Okay, that's good for you, but what about the kids who don't have that?
Not just for me. It still works, though. If it's not the parent, you've got to have the extended family. Parents have a very strong impact on the intellectual gap of their children. Also, we've got to fix these public schools. These public schools are not teaching. They've become war zones. I believe that charter schools, school vouchers are options that people can consider. It's not a panacea. But focusing just solely on affirmative action, I mean, it's just not there. So there's so many other things that determine the success of a child in school.
Go ahead, Roland.
Affirmative action is a part of the discussion. It is not the entire discussion. So I certainly agree. I had two parents who clearly stayed on us, myself, my brother, my three sisters, when it came to education. But I can't deny the reality that the education that I received in an inner city school was far different than what my suburban counterparts were receiving. Now, Armstrong makes the point that we're really overblowing it. Well, you know what? Tell that to these law schools that have seen dramatic decreases in the number of African Americans who are in attendance. Talk about the folks in these medical schools. So, you know, when you say 56% of the people in the inner city, youngsters, they haven't heard of affirmative action, well, you know what? Study from the Joint Center dispute that. They understand affirmative action. They understand it when it comes to education. And what I want is for America to understand that we have not reached the point where we are beyond this discussion. It should be a part of discussion, but not the entire discussion on how to improve the education
Hang on,
status of African Americans.
Hang on, Jonathan, quickly from you.
If President Bush was indeed admitted on the basis of his socioeconomic status or his family's legacy or whatever, is it really fair that we blame him for that, or is that something that he's addressing now, that it's an administrative problem and that?
Well, yeah, it's fair because he is critical of the Michigan affirmative action case by calling it quotas. Yet he has said nothing about the legacy preference, and that's my whole point. If you are against preferences, you should be against all preferences, not just race. But I have not heard any of these conservative mouthpieces or the politicians say anything against legacy. They said nothing.
And on that note, I take a break. Racial preferences or favoritism for alumni children. Is there a difference? We're talking about the explosive debate around affirmative action. Secretary of State Colin Powell weighed in over the weekend. Find out what he said when we come back. We're back after this break.
There's Carlina. She has never taken a single sick day, ever.
What's Carlina's secret? Tylenol Cold Severe Congestion. It provides triple action nasal, chest, and head relief. Tylenol Cold.
While other mortgage companies are still filling out the paperwork, Ditech.com is busy processing your loan. Apply now for a low fixed-rate mortgage or cash out some of your equity. It's a whole new way to get a mortgage. Just log on or call 1-800-71-FIXED. Ditech.com, your mortgage solution delivered.
Today on Talkback Live, there's some speculation the whole standoff in Iraq could be settled if Saddam Hussein would just go away into exile. But who would take him? That's our question of the day. Go ahead and give me a call right now at 1-800-310-4CNN or email me at talkback@cnn.com. The talk continues after this break.
If you're living with diabetes, Simplex Medical has important news for you. Medicare covers your diabetes testing supplies. As the leading healthcare provider, Simplex Medical will deliver your testing supplies direct to your door at no charge to you with no upfront costs. We handle all the paperwork, eliminating confusing forms, and our highly dedicated staff tracks your reorder needs so you always have supplies when you need them. For service beyond compare and safe, no-charge delivery of your diabetes testing supplies, call 1-888-919-2525.
Get an amazing PC deal now from Gateway. Buy one award-winning PC and get a second award-winning PC for free. Purchase a Gateway 700XL desktop or a Gateway 600XL notebook, and you'll get a Gateway 300S value PC for free. The Gateway 600XL notebook PC uses the mobile Intel Pentium 4 processor M.
I'll take it.
Call 1-800-GATEWAY now.
Tonight on CNN Primetime, at 8, she's charged with running her husband down. Take an inside look at the trial of Clara Harris. Then at 9, seeking answers to new questions surrounding the disappearance of Laci Peterson on Larry King Live. And at 10, a rare and extraordinary broadcast, Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech in its entirety, plus on Dexter King on Newsnight. Connie Chung, Larry King, Aaron Brown. It's all part of CNN Primetime tonight.
We're talking about affirmative action. And Armstrong, I want to start with you in this segment here. What are your thoughts on the University of Michigan's affirmative action program?
Arthel, listen, before the passage of the civil rights legislation and then long after, I mean, blacks were subjected to blatant discrimination, racism. They could not even use the same restrooms. They were denied access to higher education. And many people stood against that, including a lot of good white people who saw the injustices and the moral bankruptcy in that. They fought with us. Today, if you're going to tell a white student just because they're white that you cannot qualify for the 20 points just because you're white, then I am just as outraged about that as they were 40 or 50 years ago, because that is morally bankrupt. And you cannot resolve one wrong with another wrong. It's just a total injustice, and we've got to be against that too.
Well, how do you resolve our